Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351, Rectification of Atmosphere. The bell rang, and Professor Flitwick walked into the classroom. He happily introduced the content of this class to everyone. They were going to practice the color changing spell. Last week we tried feather color changing, and everyone has basically mastered it. So this class we are going to learn how to change the color of your clothes. Professor Flitwick tapped his wizard robe with his wand, and the black wizard robe immediately became colorful, as if a rainbow wrapped him up, and Professor Flitwick became very energetic. The spell is still the same, but remember, you must have a very clear concept in your mind, thinking about the color you want to change. Only in this way can the color changing spell work. Professor Flitwick tapped his wizard robe again, and the wizard robe turned bright red, and the pattern on it seemed like a flame was burning. At this time, he looked like he was on fire, which amazed many students. Okay, use your imagination to change your monotonous wizard robe to a favorite color. Professor Flitwick began to walk around the classroom in a bright red robe and give everyone guidance. This spell is really too difficult, Hugo complained. Last week, he barely managed to turn a black feather into a white feather with the help of Maureen, but he couldn't change it to other colors. Is it difficult, Hugo? Professor Flitwick walked over with a smile and glanced at Maureen. You have an excellent partner who won the second place in the Dumbledore Cup. Don't waste such a good opportunity, Hugo. Do you need me to let Maureen demonstrate it to you? Hugo rolled his eyes. Maureen has now become a special teaching tool for Professor Kane and Professor Flitwick. Once someone says it's difficult, they will lift Maureen up, so that everyone will have nothing to say. I think it's wiser to practice on you first. I plan to turn your clothes purple. Hugo thought for a while, pointed his wand at Maureen's clothes, and whispered, colorful. The color-changing spell fell on Maureen's clothes, and then Maureen's clothes caught fire. That's quite wise. Maureen glanced at his burning clothes, waved his wand very calmly, put out the fire, and repaired the burned hole. Hugo's wand always catches fire, which is not surprising to him. Other students don't have to worry about the problem of burning clothes. But I still suggest you practice with a rag first. Maureen waved his wand, secretly cut off a small piece of the curtain the size of a palm, threw it on Hugo's desk, and cast a water and fire invulnerability spell on the cloth. This way it shouldn't burn. He carefully taught Hugo how to cast the spell, so that this guy would not always fail and cause various fires around him. Not many people can successfully change the color of clothes. It's good enough to basically change a sleeve or a collar. Probably except for Sweet. Sweet's subjects are second only to Maureen, and you can basically master the spell in every class. Have you checked each of the 12 patterns? Sweet suddenly asked again. There are 5 people I don't know, why do you ask? Maureen turned to look at Sweet, whose wizard robe had turned red from head to toe, much more intense than the others. But his red gave people a very depressing feeling, which made Maureen think of the red light in Sweet's eyes when he saw his sunglasses fall off on the Quidditch field last semester. Sweet looked at the 12 patterns again, hesitated for a moment, and finally shook his head and said, no, just asking casually. The following days were relatively quiet for Maureen. Professor Binns didn't remember the origin of these patterns, and Professor Kane would often remind him not to run around. He ran to join the Magic Painting Legend Club to learn painting, and Poker was even more resentful of him. You can't be indecisive, Maureen. You joining so many meaningless clubs will only waste your talent in Quidditch. Poker was very annoyed that Maureen often didn't participate in Quidditch training. But Poker, last time I didn't participate in the competition, Cryfinder still won. You should believe in Lily and Sweet. Maureen has been too busy recently. He has no intention to participate in Quidditch training. In addition to practicing painting, he has to squeeze out time to go to the library to check various materials. He often goes to across arcane space and time to learn arcane jump whenever he has time. This is not a reason for you to miss training. I must see you on Saturday. Poker left angrily. Maureen sighed. If training Quidditch can help him deal with Lucas or Pangard, he will definitely be very happy to spend all his energy on Quidditch. Since the end of the Dumbledore Cup, Professor Kane has rectified the entire club and no longer allowed the members of the club to grow arrogant inexplicably. Webley and Maureen's performance in the competition made Professor Kane understand what kind of atmosphere the entire club needs. He no longer spoiled these talented students. He first wrote a book called Be a Polite Wizard, Perform Civilized Magic, and Build a Harmonious Hogwarts, and asked the club members to recite it. "Professor, this will not help us get a good ranking. We should learn advanced magic." Pearson disdained the outline given by Professor Kane. To him, it was a meaningless book. But Professor Kane said seriously, "The spirit left by Headmaster Dumbledore tells us that learning to be a good person is 100 times more important than learning magic. Pearson, if you don't restrain your arrogance and have an open-minded attitude to learn, your magic talent will end here. Last year, Weberry's magic level was inferior to yours, but this year he beat the crowd and won the first place. Why do you always feel superior? Don't you feel ashamed? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar." "Professor, I don't like the cover of this book," Weberry said while holding the outline of Being a Human Being. Professor Kane said unhappily, "Shut up, Weberry, I'm praising you, be quiet for a while." Pearson said nothing. He looked at Weberry, who was laughing there, and felt very uncomfortable. Weberry's magic level this year is indeed many times better than last year. If he hadn't seen Weberry's transfiguration in the Dumbledore Cup, he wouldn't even know that Weberry had improved to this level. Although Weberry didn't meet the strongest Zimmerman, he also defeated the Booksburton student who won the second place in the Dumbledore Cup last year, which is enough to explain everything. Pearson, Constance, you two usually rely on your superior talents, look down on others, and are complacent. If you still don't repent until now, then there is no need to stay in this club. Both Maureen and Weberry are much better than you," Professor Kane said sternly. Constance and Pearson dared not speak anymore. Pearson was defeated by Zimmerman, but Zimmerman was defeated by Maureen. This alone left Pearson speechless. Constance was defeated more thoroughly by Maureen. A person might be able to get a good ranking by luck, but what Maureen showed was far from being as simple as luck. Not only Pearson and Constance, everyone should reflect on themselves. Constance will be removed from the position of president. This club does not need any president. All members are treated equally and I will be directly responsible. I don't want to see you showing off in front of your classmates anymore. If anyone is arrogant, sarcastic to others, and mocks others, I will ban him from participating in any subsequent competitions until you learn to respect others. I will not indulge you anymore, you'd better remember this." Professor Kane was going to take real action this time. He used to turn a blind eye to these elite students, and would not punish anyone even if they made a mistake. But now he understands that if the problem is not corrected from the root, then the club will lose its original intention. Because arrogant people will only bring shame to the school once they leave Hogwarts. Chapter 352, Continuous Progress. Professor Kane has already started explaining how to be a good person. Maureen is also flipping through the long outline of this book. He saw the content on the first page, Know Yourself. Professor Kane is really amazing. Maureen looked at these 4 words and couldn't help but admire Professor Kane's philosophy. He remembered Walker on page 229 of Across Arcane Time and Space. The sentence Walker often said to him the most was to know yourself. Know yourself first, then you can defeat yourself. This is a truth in learning magic. It was originally something left by the 4 founders to invisible people like Maureen, but because of the Dumbledore Cup, Professor Kane also realized the importance of knowing yourself. Maureen has now basically mastered the magic of spell jump, but mastering it is far from enough. If he wants to learn the second magic, he first needs to defeat Walker. Walker knows him too well. The magic they know is the same, so it is difficult for Maureen to win. The only thing to be happy about now is that because he has learned spell jump, he can tie with Walker. First of all, you need to understand what kind of person you are, what defects you have, and what obstacles these defects have caused to your magic ability. Professor Kane talked at the podium, while Maureen listened to Professor Kane's words while thinking about his own things. For example, when you cast a petrification spell, why do others dodge your petrification spell in time? That's because others are experienced. The moment you raise your wand, they understand what you are doing and how to release your spell. If you can't defeat your opponent with a spell, it means that he knows you better than you know yourself. Walker's experience is not richer than mine, but he can dissolve my magic at any time. It seems that Walker is familiar with every one of my spellcasting movements. I really didn't care about this problem. The one who knows you best should be yourself, but your opponent knows you better than you do, So you will definitely lose miserably. No wonder Walker always beats me miserably. If your opponent is as strong as you, and you haven't gained an advantage in several rounds, it means that he has figured out your way of attacking. Your only chance to defeat him is to change your habit of casting magic so that he can't see through you. So my chance to defeat Walker lies in my own casting habits? To know yourself, you need to know yourself from all aspects such as your thoughts and behaviors. You need to understand what you usually do, how you do it, what are the consequences of doing so, and whether you can change the way to improve it. Maureen listened to Professor Kane's words, and his mind suddenly became clear. He vaguely knew how to defeat Walker. What he needed to do now was to recall his habits first. Professor Kane's next topic turned to, what role does being a civilized and loving wizard play in the development of the magic society, how to pass on the virtues of modesty and politeness, and why Headmaster Dumbledore is respected. But Maureen has begun to think about his shortcomings. Walker always deals with him according to his habits. This time he wants to use his habits to deal with Walker in turn. When Maureen stood on page 229 again, he was no longer so stressed when facing Walker. You have been defeated by me 367 times. Walker reminded. Maureen has been here a lot recently, trying every way to fight Walker, but unfortunately he has never succeeded. He can't even remember how many times he has failed, but Walker has counted them for him. It doesn't matter. It's not shameful to lose to yourself. Maureen didn't care at all. My level is equal to your strength yesterday. If you are not better than you were yesterday, you can't beat me. You have to understand this. Walker said again. I understand this. Maureen raised his wand, then come on. Pull out your wand and let's have a fair duel. Maureen's wand sprayed a red light, and the stunning spell rushed over. Walker turned his wand, and a golden halo flashed in front of his eyes, swallowing the stunning spell, and then appeared behind Maureen. Maureen waved a mist, and then apparated behind Walker. Walker knew all these spells. He didn't even turn around. He just tilted his body to avoid the confusion spell. But then he frowned. When the confusion spell came, there was a red light mixed in. Swish. Maureen finally showed a victorious smile. Walker's wand had been taken away by him with the disarming spell. This seamless way of casting spells was specially studied by Maureen before he came here. Because he studied his own casting method many times, he found that if someone treated him like this, he couldn't avoid it, which meant that Walker couldn't avoid it either. You have made great progress compared to the first time you came here. Walker didn't say much after being defeated, but praised Maureen very affirmatively. Should I say thank you? Every time Walker gave him instructions, Maureen always felt awkward. Walker's expression was as if he was looking at a junior. The problem was that he was the same age as him. You can already learn the second time and space magic. Walker's body turned inwards and merged into the ground, disappearing. The 12 staircase platforms above also began to creak and make the sound of moving wooden boards. Then the words on the ground crawled out like dense blocks, piecing together stairs and leading to the second platform. With a dull sound, the second staircase platform was fixed. Maureen walked up, and Walker was waiting for him on the second staircase platform. I am you on the second floor. Walker said. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. I already know how to deal with you next. After understanding his own shortcomings, Maureen felt that he only needed to learn the remaining 12 spells, and then defeat himself with the current method, which would not be a difficult task. But Walker poured cold water on him. When you entered this level, I copied you today. If you want to go to the third level, you must be better than you are today. People cannot stand still. I have learned the way you dealt with me just now. Next time, I will use your method to circumvent it. You must come up with another improved method. Walker said. Once Maureen learned a piece of knowledge, the Walker on the next level will also learn it immediately. Continuous progress and continuous improvement, that's what it means. But Maureen just likes challenges. Everything is difficult at the beginning. With the experience of the first time, even if the second Walker is stronger, he has the confidence to defeat himself. So what magic am I going to learn this time? Maureen asked confidently. Space and time magic are cross-learned. This time it's time magic. Walker said. Can this time magic also change time? For example, go back to the past or something. This is the first time Maureen has learned time magic, but he is in awe of anything related to time. Time magic is extremely profound. Magic that changes time, like the time converter, is basically not something that many people can perform. It is not used to change time, but to let you see time. Walker said slowly. See the time? How can you see the time? I thought time is invisible. Maureen didn't quite understand what Walker meant. Chapter 353, Afterimage. Time is attached to everything, and traces of time can be found on everything. So if you think it has a form, it has a form, and if you think it has no form, it has no form. Walker explained seriously. Maureen thought about it, and the statement was still a bit mysterious. So what is the function of the first time magic I want to learn? Maureen asked. See the past. Walker raised his wand and pointed it at Maureen. Maureen was still thinking about whether he should dodge, but Walker's wand had already sprayed out a white light. The afterimage is revealed. The white light passed Maureen's shoulder and fell into the void behind Maureen, sending out a ripple. Maureen turned around and looked at the ripple, and then he was surprised to see a strange scene. The ripple spread out like ink, gradually gathering into a shadow, and these shadows condensed out, and then Maureen saw two of himself standing on the first staircase platform, fighting each other with magic. He couldn't tell which one was himself and which one was Walker, but when one of them let his wand slip out of his hand, he probably understood. Walker said a lot of things, and the stairs began to appear. Maureen began to walk up to the second platform and walk towards Maureen. Maureen felt a little weird, and he took a step back. The person who walked up looked no different from himself. He was thinking about whether to give way or something, but the Maureen passed through his body like a ghost and stood where he was originally standing. At this time, there were already 3 Maureens on the second staircase. The afterimage can make things that happened in a place reappear in the form of shadows. Walker explained. He glanced at Maureen and said, when using this spell, if you can't recognize what is real and what is fake, you will confuse time, so I ask you to learn to know yourself first. I shouldn't confuse time, right? Maureen said. He could still tell which one was Walker and which one was himself created by the afterimage. We are the only ones here, so the scene we see is very simple. If it is somewhere else, such as a crowded place like a school corridor, the longer you see the past, the more things will happen in this area, and the more people will walk past this place. At that time, you will not be able to distinguish between reality and magic. Walker said. Maureen nodded thoughtfully. The afterimages he saw with the magic of seeing the past were too real. If he didn't verify it, it would be easy to confuse it with his eyes alone. But he became excited again, because this magic was a bit powerful. With this magic, wouldn't he be able to track Lucas? For example, when he was at the Muggle Opera House, he could use this magic to see what Lucas did before he came here. But Walker poured cold water on him again. This magic is very difficult. How long you can see the scene in the past is related to your magic. If you can see the scene 10 minutes ago, it basically meets the requirements. Walker said. Only 10 minutes? It's a bit short. I was hoping to see the scene a few days ago. Maureen muttered. Soon he found that he was thinking too much. Not to mention 10 minutes, even 1 second was difficult for him. He couldn't even cast this magic at the moment. In early December, a heavy snow swept across the entire Hogwarts. The entire castle was covered with snow. Looking around, the white scenery was refreshing. Even the green forbidden forest was covered with a layer of white. On Saturday afternoon, Maureen and Anren were reading in the library. He was looking for information on various patterns and learning magic with Anren. Anren was also very talented in magic, especially in healing magic. Her healing magic was very powerful. Maureen had seen it several times. However, practicing healing magic was very troublesome. For example, when Anren wanted to practice bone setting, Maureen couldn't break his own leg to practice for Anren. Then go to the infirmary. I think Madame Pomfrey is very happy to teach you healing magic. Maureen thought for a while and said, maybe she will give you some opportunities to practice. In Hogwarts, the school infirmary is very important. Every day, many students have some magical accidents, such as their mouths are sewn up, green onions are growing in their ears, and their eyebrows grow under their eyes. Anyway, students will have their own strange reasons to lie in the infirmary. But basically, these magical injuries can be cured by Madame Pomfrey in the blink of an eye. The more serious ones may require 2 or 3 days or a week. As long as they are not very serious dark magic injuries, Madame Pomfrey can solve them. But I don't know Madame Pomfrey. Will she agree? And Ren asked. I'll take you to ask. I heard that Madame Pomfrey is also a professor of magical medicine. It is an elective course. Maureen accidentally learned about this when he heard Professor Kane introduce the elective course last time. There are many elective courses in school, and magical healing is also an elective. You start learning from the 3rd grade, and you can apply for the therapist qualification certificate in the 7th grade. If you pass the exam, you can work in places like St. Mungo's Magical Hospital after graduation. But I heard that not many people take this course, because learning healing magic requires talent, and the therapist qualification certificate is extremely difficult to pass. It is good if 1 out of 10 people can pass it. Especially now the doctor-patient relationship is tense. There are often reports in the news that some arrogant wizards miss the best treatment time because of magical injuries, and they can't be cured, so they take their anger out on the therapists and curse the therapists, making many students unwilling to step into the profession of therapists. Maureen put away the books and walked towards the infirmary on the 2nd floor with Anran. The latest novels are first published on the 6th book bar on September 9th. The school infirmary looked very busy. When Maureen and Anran went in, Madame Pomfrey was extracting the teeth of a 5th-year boy who had ivory growing in his mouth, and there were 2 senior girls in white coats taking notes next to them. Their magic medicine classroom is here. When there are no patients, they have theoretical classes, and when there are patients, they have practical classes. Basically, there is no shortage of patients and students used as teaching tools every day in the school. Who used the ivory curse on you? The tooth pits left by this curse are not so easy to eliminate. You can spend the night here. Madame Pomfrey threw 2 half-meter-long tusks into the trash can. The boy's mouth was still wide open, as if his jaw was dislocated because of the thick tusks, and he was drooling. Maureen also saw 2 very shocking holes in the boy's upper jaw. They were the pits left by the tooth extraction. They were as thick as 2 fingers and were very scary. Madame Pomfrey took a bottle of cocky viscous potion and filled the 2 big holes. Then white smoke came out of the boy's mouth, just like a chimney. Okay, I'll put your dislocated jaw back in tomorrow morning and fill your teeth. Just bear with it tonight. Madame Pomfrey held up her reading glasses and stuffed a towel into the boy's mouth, asking him to wipe his saliva. The boy looked up pitifully, trying not to drool again, but when he climbed onto the bed, his saliva still dripped onto the sheets. Maureen and Anran looked at each other. They both felt sorry for the boy with tusks. Chapter 354, Healing Magus Ability. I don't know how to pull out people's teeth, especially ivory. Anran was a little unconfident. It was the first time for her to see ivory coming out of someone's mouth. I don't know how to deal with such a weird magic. It doesn't matter. No one knows how to pull out people's ivory at the beginning. Let's go and ask first. Maybe Madame Pomfrey will let you learn how to pull out tiger teeth, wolf teeth, squirrel's big front teeth, etc. Maureen walked towards Madame Pomfrey. Madame Pomfrey looked a little tired. She covered the cocky potion and put it back in the medicine cabinet. She asked the 2 students beside her to deal with another patient with leaves growing on his arm. Then she glanced at Maureen and Anran and asked, "So what's wrong with you 2? "Oh, we're fine, Madame Pomfrey." Maureen said quickly, "We just thought that it must be very hard for you to treat so many patients every day, right? I wonder if you need help? For example, a trainee nurse or something." Trainee nurse. Madame Pomfrey looked at Maureen suspiciously. "I remember you, the walker who sneaked into the Forbidden Forest last time. Everyone went out to look for you, but you came out of the Forbidden Forest alive in the end. You are really capable." "Thank you, Madame Pomfrey. Actually I'm not praising you." "Oh." Maureen touched his nose. "You want to be a nurse? I haven't heard of boys wanting to be nurses. If you have that talent, I suggest you take my magic medicine class in your 3rd year next year, and then take a therapist qualification certificate in your 7th year." Madame Pomfrey said. "You misunderstood, Madame Pomfrey." Maureen waved her hand quickly. He pulled Anran in front of him and said, "It's her. Her name is Anran. She's a 1st-year student." "Maybe. I don't accept 1st-year students as nurses. If a 5th-year student is interested in this, I might consider it, but not for 1st-year students. They know too little knowledge." Madame Pomfrey waved her hand to interrupt Maureen's words, then hurriedly picked up the wand and waved it. The mop in the corner immediately jumped up and swept the dirt on the ground. "If you don't have anything to do, go out quickly and don't disturb me. It's already messy enough here. Today is the weekend. I guess there will be more students with tusks later. I don't have time to teach the 1st-year novices." Madame Pomfrey turned around and prepared to leave. Is it not possible to treat Magus? Madame Pomfrey? Maureen asked from behind. Madame Pomfrey stopped and looked at the two of them in confusion. Treat Magus? Who? You are her. It's her. Unran. Maureen introduced. Madame Pomfrey cast a suspicious look at Unran. There are very few healing mags. In the past 10 years, I have only seen one, who has graduated. Are you a healing mags? Unran said shyly and hurriedly, I don't know. They say I am, but I am not sure if I am. I can only treat some burns and cuts, and I can't pull out every. After saying this, she added very honestly, I can't pull out a big front tooth. Unran can treat burns caused by dark magic. I have seen it. At that time, she was not in school and didn't even have a wand. Maureen said immediately. The last time Lucas set fire to Professor Adams's restaurant, it was Unran who helped. Madame Pomfrey pondered for a moment, and she still looked a little skeptical. Whether it is a healing mags, this is easy to verify. Come with me. Madame Pomfrey still attaches great importance to this matter. If there is really a natural healing mags, he must be cultivated. The natural healing mags are much more skilled than the healers who learn and pass the exam. You two should help deal with it first, and don't come to me again. Madame Pomfrey told her two students, then motioned for Maureen and Unran to follow, and said as she walked, it is rare to treat Magus. Those high-ranking healers at St. Mungo's Hospital are born to treat Magus. I hope you are not making fun of me. No. Maureen said quickly, and then he asked, Madame Pomfrey, are you treating Magus? I am. Madame Pomfrey did not deny it. Maureen was a little surprised. I heard from my grandfather that Magus treatment usually goes to St. Mungo's Hospital. After all, that is where they can really display their talents. That's not necessarily the case. Madame Pomfrey said disapprovingly, there is no place for saving people and curing diseases. As long as you like this job, you can go anywhere. That's right. Maureen admired Madame Pomfrey in his heart. The healer with this concept is the greatest. They walked into the pharmacy, and what came into view were countless large and small shelves, on which various colorful medicine bottles were neatly placed. These medicine bottles were of different colors and sizes. The small one is a small glass bottle, and the big one is like a transparent fish tank, soaked with red liquid medicine with tentacles of unknown origin, and these tentacles can move. The whole pharmacy is filled with all kinds of strange and pungent smells, which makes Maureen cover her nose, but Madame Pomfrey is very indifferent, not even frowning. She has gotten used to the smell here. These potions, you come and tell me what they are for. Madame Pomfrey pointed to the potions on the shelf and said, Madame Pomfrey, this is a bit difficult, isn't it? Unran is just a first-year student, she doesn't understand these at all. Does she need to learn? Maureen pinched her nose and said, Natural healing mags is very sensitive to herbs, and can roughly judge the specific effect of a certain medicine by smell. Only ordinary healers need to learn by memory. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Madame Pomfrey glanced at Maureen, and when she saw that Maureen was covering his nose, she knew that he was not good at this. Unran did not find these smells unpleasant. On the contrary, she looked a little surprised. The smell here. I seem to know something. Unran walked to a row of medicine cabinets and gently sniffed a gourd-shaped glass bottle with the golden potions in it. I don't know if I'm right, but I think this smell should be used to treat injuries related to the arm. The smell in the purple plastic bottle next to it seems to be used to treat bones, and this one is for skin healing. Unran listed the types of treatments for each potion bottle on the shelf. She couldn't say what kind of injuries caused by spells these potions could treat, because she knew too few spells, but she was very clear about the structure of the human body, and she knew naturally which part of the body the potion could be used to treat, and she could even smell the potions for the internal organs. Madame Pomfrey's expression changed from indifference at the beginning to surprise, and finally a rare smile appeared on her serious face. Yes, yes. Madame Pomfrey raised her reading glasses and nodded happily. Even Mary and Lola can't completely recognize these potions, but you are almost right. Madame Pomfrey, then Unran is the one who treats Magus, right? She can heal my wounds without a wand. Maureen still didn't let go of his nose. He didn't like the smell here. Of course she is. Now all she lacks is to learn the healing spells and some detailed treatment methods. Treating Magus, this is a big deal. You just said you want to learn from me. Madame Pomfrey asked. Yes, if possible. Unran nodded quickly. Of course, come to me when you are free, and I will teach you how to use these medicines. Madame Pomfrey smiled. You must learn your potions and herbs class as well. Of course, this is not difficult for you. After all, we are born to be good at this kind of thing. Tisk tisk. Maureen breathed a sigh of relief. Madame Pomfrey agreed to take Anran to study, so he didn't have to break his legs for Anran to practice. Let other students serve as teaching tools for Anran. Chapter 355, Stumble. Then Anran, you can follow Madame Pomfrey in the afternoon. I'll go back first. Maureen waved to Anran, thought for a moment, and said, I believe you will be able to extract ivory soon. Anran couldn't help laughing. Well, I'll find you at dinner. Maureen left the pharmacy and was about to leave the school infirmary when he ran into a huge monster running in a hurry. The huge impact almost made Maureen fall to the ground. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Oh, it's you, Maureen. I didn't see you. Are you okay? Hagrid hurriedly grabbed Maureen, who was about to fall. He stood in the school infirmary like a small mountain, and his head almost touched the ceiling. It's okay, Professor. Maureen stabilized his body. He noticed that Hagrid was wearing a pair of big boots like a little dolphin. The boots were covered with ice chips and mud, and there seemed to be some strange leaves on them. What happened? Professor, so anxious. Maureen asked puzzledly. It's urgent. I'm here to see Madame Pomfrey. Hagrid walked around Maureen anxiously, then waved to Madame Pomfrey, who had just come out of the pharmacy, and shouted, Madame Pomfrey, this way. This way. I have something to ask you. Can you do me a favor? Hagrid. My God. You should take off that coat. The temperature here doesn't require a coat. Madame Pomfrey frowned when she saw the big snow footprints left by Hagrid when he came in. She liked the hospital room to be clean, but Hagrid dirtied the floor as soon as he came in. Sorry, Madame Pomfrey, I will help you clean it up, but it's a little unexpected now. I hope you can help me. Hagrid said anxiously. He took 2 steps back and retreated to the door. Snowflakes fell from his coat again. Madame Pomfrey took out her wand to clean up the snowflakes, and then asked, What's the matter? Are you injured there? It's not me. Can you come out for a while? This matter. Hagrid looked at the students in the ward and said in a low voice, as if he didn't want others to know about it. Madame Pomfrey walked out and closed the door. When Maureen came to the door, he did not rush to open it, but stood behind it. It's like this. Hagrid said, trying to keep his voice down. There was an accident with the centaurs, and one of their companions was injured. Centaurs? Aren't they proficient in healing magic? Madame Pomfrey said, her tone seemed a little cold and arrogant. Then why did you come to me? Those injuries can't be cured. I don't know. It seems very serious. I just went to see it. The wound is too strange. Maybe only you can help. Hagrid said. You should know, Hagrid, the centaurs don't like our wizards' healing magic and divination magic. They think that what we do is just pediatrics. Why would they let you come to me? Madame Pomfrey seemed a little angry when she mentioned the centaurs, and she was very dissatisfied with them. Maureen listened carefully in the back, and was a little curious about the centaurs' injuries. He knew that the centaurs were proficient in divination and healing magic. The centaurs believed that their abilities in these 2 areas were impeccable, so they did not recognize the wizard's knowledge in these 2 areas. Madame Pomfrey has been at Hogwarts for decades, and must have been looked down upon by the centaurs. It's not them. I came to you. After all, they are. I don't know, but I think it's necessary to do them a favor. Hagrid said. The centaurs shot and injured our students last time. Madame Pomfrey raised her voice. They also questioned my medical skills and thought I couldn't cure them. I don't want to make trouble for myself. They are not questioning you, Madame Pomfrey. They just think it's faster for them to treat the arrow wound. Of course, in fact, you healed the wound in the blink of an eye. The centaurs are indeed a little arrogant, but I feel that we can't just stand by and watch them die. After all, they are also our neighbors. What do you think? Hagrid hesitated. Madame Pomfrey snorted heavily, pondered for a moment, and then said, Okay, I'll go with you to take a look, but I can't promise anything. If they still have that arrogant attitude, I will leave immediately. I'll go get the medicine box first. Madame Pomfrey reopened the door, walked in, and glanced at Maureen behind the door. Why haven't you left yet? I'm about to leave, Madame Pomfrey. Maureen hurried out. Hagrid was rubbing his hands in the corridor outside, a little impatient. Seeing Maureen coming out, he forced a smile. Maureen, it's a good day today, you should show up. Oh, sorry, I forgot, it's snowing heavily outside. I hope you came to the school infirmary not because you got into trouble and hurt yourself. I heard about the last competition. I just came here to accompany others. I've been very well behaved these days. Maureen said seriously, and then asked, Professor, I just heard that some centaur was injured. That's nothing. It was icy and snowy, and the horse slipped and fell. It was a bit serious. You know, it's normal for a horse to stumble. Okay, you go on, and don't come to the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid waved his hand and muttered a very embarrassing excuse. Merlin was even more curious, but he didn't ask any more questions. If Hagrid didn't want him to know, it would be useless to ask. He was now listed as the #1 disturbing element by the professors. After returning from the Dumbledore Cup last time, he was invited to the principal for tea. He has become a frequent visitor to the principal's office. Recently, he should be honest and low-key, and wait until the storm is over. Merlin walked to the large balcony on the second floor, from which he could see the scenery outside the castle. Hagrid and Madame Pomfrey were already walking towards the Forbidden Forest in the snow, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. There were still a few snowflakes floating in the sky, which soon covered their footprints. But Merlin did not see the centaurs at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, and he didn't know what happened to the centaurs. After he saw Hagrid and Madame Pomfrey disappear in the Forbidden Forest, he walked back with a dull mood. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. But before he had walked far, Sweet suddenly came over from the corner. I was looking for you. I thought you were in the library. Sweet said sullenly. I was in the library just now. What's the matter? Maureen asked. Sweet hesitated and asked, have you figured out what the 12 patterns represent? I haven't found out yet. I checked a lot of information in the library, but I only found the one about Wolf King Rekenlove. Maureen asked puzzledly, you seem to be very concerned about this. Do you know anything? Sweet was silent for a long time, nodded and said, I know one of the patterns. One of them? Is it in addition to the 7 that we already know? Maureen was slightly surprised. Yes, I have seen one of them. Sweet looked at Maureen with a strange look. Chapter 356 Fangs. Maureen had no idea about the remaining patterns recently. The only person who knew clearly was Professor Binns, an old ghost with a bad memory. It was surprising that Sweet had seen a certain pattern. He took out the folded paper from his pocket, spread it out, and showed the 12 patterns to Sweet. Which pattern have you seen? Sweet silently pointed to the one on the right. The pattern looked like 2 triangles side by side. What do these 2 triangles mean? Maureen asked puzzled. These are not 2 triangles. Sweet took out a pen from his pocket and made some minor changes on Maureen's paper. He drew a more curved arc on the edge of the triangle, and then said, it should look like this. Like 2 fangs. Maureen nodded, yes, this is what I saw. He just had limited drawing skills, so he simply drew the 2 fangs as triangles, and the arc was not accurate enough. After Sweet made the arc more obvious, it looked more like it. As for the lions, eagles, badgers and snakes of the 4 colleges, he copied them from other books with magic, and he couldn't draw such complicated animal patterns. Where have you seen this pattern? Maureen asked again. Sweet glanced at the white snow outside, frowned slightly, and looked around. There were 2 students walking towards this side in the distance. He motioned Maureen to follow, and the 2 turned into an empty classroom on the 2nd floor. Be careful, don't be illuminated. Sweet took out his wand and whispered, sunlight scorching. The tip of his wand emitted an extremely strong white light. Maureen slightly turned his eyes away to avoid being directly hit by the sunlight. This spell can summon strong light similar to the sun, which is very uncomfortable to look at directly. Sweet did not look directly at the light. He moved his wand away a little, and then said, look into my eyes. Maureen was slightly stunned. Under the illumination of the sunlight, Sweet's eyes emitted a red light. He then remembered one thing. Sweet rarely went out to bask in the sun during the day. When the sun was shining, he refused to participate in Quidditch games for various reasons. In the 1st grade, poker disappeared, and Carol framed them, Cryfinder, which resulted in Philia and Diana being unable to play. Sweet was unwilling to replace them at that time, and finally wore Muggle sunglasses to play. During the game, in order to help Maureen grab the golden snitch, Sweet hit the goal post, and his Muggle sunglasses flew out. Although Sweet quickly closed his eyes, Maureen still caught a glimpse of the red light in Sweet's eyes at that time. This kind of light, Maureen never asked why Sweet's eyes glowed red, but he was suddenly startled. People with glowing eyes, that's not. Maureen took a breath of cold air. He actually forgot that Sweet's eyes had red light. Last time, at the Muggle Opera House, the summer camp, and the Muggle office building, I accidentally ran to the place with 2 moons, and everyone I met in that place had eyes that flashed with various lights. And Sweet's eyes at this time looked exactly the same as those people Maureen met. Not to mention them, even Maureen's own eyes emitted a blue and a green light in that place. What's going on? Maureen asked hurriedly. Look carefully at my eyes. Sweet said sullenly. Maureen stared at Sweet's eyes that were emitting red light, and then he was very surprised to find that in Sweet's 2 eyes, there was actually a fang faintly appearing, and these 2 fangs together formed the pattern on Maureen's parchment. What's wrong with your eyes? Maureen felt more and more puzzled. Why is there such a pattern in your eyes? I don't know. When I saw the pattern on your paper that day, I felt something was wrong. Sweet shook his head and remembered something. The red light in his eyes dimmed a little. My mother drew this pattern for me before. She said that this pattern represents my eyes. It is a gift. Gift? Yes, a gift. I never knew what it meant. Sweet glanced at Maureen. Maureen's eyes were also very abnormal. The color of his eyes was different. Maureen suddenly remembered what his mother had told him before. Different eyes are a gift from God. The meaning was the same as what Sweet's mother said. But I don't like this gift. Sweet waved his wand and dispersed the sunlight magic on the top of the wand. His eyes returned to normal, and then he said sullenly, this gift makes me a monster in the eyes of others. I dare not appear in other people's sight when the sun is out. Sweet would wear sunglasses when participating in competitions when the sun was out. When he met him during the summer vacation, he was also wearing sunglasses. Maureen fell silent. He looked at Sweet and felt an inexplicable sense of identification. I understand. Maureen said, I was often laughed at as a monster when I was a child. Before coming to Hogwarts, Maureen and Alton lived in a Muggle neighborhood. When playing with Muggle children, Maureen was one of the excluded and laughed at, so he had few playmates when he was a child. He lived in a Muggle place, but he was a Muggle blind. At least your eyes don't glow in the sun. Sweet walked to the chair in the classroom and sat down. The latest novels are first published on 6th 9 Book Bar. Maureen hesitated and said, my eyes glow too, but in another place. Although his eyes don't glow in the normal sun, his eyes glowed when he inexplicably went to the place with 2 moons last time. Sweet looked up at Maureen in surprise. Another place. I don't know what to explain. Maureen shook his head, and then he remembered something, and had a very strange idea in his mind. He asked, where are you from? In a small town near the orphanage. I grew up there, and my mother used a kind of magic to help me cover my eyes, until that year. Sweet's voice gradually weakened at the end, and he didn't say anything more, just staring at a broken scratch on the table in a daze. Sorry. Maureen felt that the atmosphere was a little depressing. He knew that Sweet went to the orphanage after his mother died. I didn't mean to remind you of these things. It has nothing to do with you. Sweet shook his head slightly, and then asked again, I once heard you and Hugo say inadvertently in the spell class that you haven't seen your parents for many years. 5 years. Maureen was also upset. They work abroad, and they have never come back except for writing letters. But then he smiled again. I'm luckier than you. I was raised by my grandfather. Maureen always felt that his grandfather was everything to him. I know, he's a very nice guy. Sweet had met Alton once during the summer vacation, when Alton went to see Sweet's sister, who was knocked unconscious by Lucas Magnet. By the way, what does this pattern in your eyes mean? I remember Payangad said last time that your Clive family and others, do their eyes look like this too? Maureen asked again. Chapter 357 Peaceful Breakup Agent. I don't know about that. Sweet frowned. I haven't seen them, and I don't know why Pang said that, but my mother taught me some special spells, and she said only I can use them. Is it the spell that uses blood? Maureen remembered the Sotolan Canyon in the painting last time. When Pang was about to attack them, Sweet cut his palm with his wand and cast a very powerful magic with blood, which was able to temporarily resist Pang for a while. Yes, that's the kind of spell. I won't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. It will make me weak and I can't control it very well. Sweet looked at his wand, and then asked with some doubts, the fire magic you used last time. Like you, it's also some special magic. After using it, I will fall asleep for a long time. Maureen fell asleep in front of the headmaster after leaving the painting last time. He slept for 2 days and 2 nights before he recovered his energy. and this ability is quite unlucky. Unlucky? How could it be? Sweet didn't quite understand. Your kind of fire is very powerful, even more powerful than my spell. Peeing is very afraid of it, isn't it? After a moment, he remembered something and said, you also burned the train at Hogwarts last year? I heard that the aurors of the Ministry of Magic couldn't extinguish it. Sweet's observation ability is very sharp. After seeing Maureen's fire against peeing in the painting, it is easy to associate it with the burning of the Hogwarts train last year. At that time, the burning of the Hogwarts train was a sensation. It's powerful, but the premise is that you can control it freely. At least you have someone to teach you, but I still don't know how to use it. Maureen spread his hands, quite helpless. I used some potions to perform, but I can't even drink this potion recently. His ability can only be stimulated by the dragon flame cold repellent, but when it is stimulated, the whole person feels out of control. Arnold is worried that there will be problems with his ability, so he no longer gives him the dragon flame cold repellent casually. Fortunately, Maureen seems to have awakened a little bit of that ability now, so his magic is more powerful than that of ordinary students. So that's how it is. Sweet nodded thoughtfully. This pattern was made by Lucas. Did you use your special magic to track Lucas before? Maureen asked. The last time Lucas went to the farm town, Sweet was able to catch up. At that time, Sweet never said how he did it. Now Maureen has figured out a lot of things. That's right. Sweet didn't intend to hide anything now. He said, within a certain distance, I can use that spell to track his whereabouts, but it's not comfortable. This spell has flaws for me. Sweet looked at his wand. The tip of his wand emitted a faint red light, which soon dissipated. Try to pay attention to the direction of the Forbidden Forest during this period. Maureen thought for a while and said, I have a hunch that Lucas is very likely to go to the Forbidden Forest to find the initiator of the Big Pit we met last time. When mentioning Lucas, Sweet's eyes flashed with a trace of anger. I will. Anyway, I will find out what this pattern means. Maybe this will solve the magic problem in both of our bodies. Maureen said. Maureen thought that Lucas would come to the Forbidden Forest soon, but he was wrong. A month had passed since the end of the Dumbledore Cup competition, and Sweet still hadn't tracked Lucas's whereabouts. There were still sounds coming from the Forbidden Forest from time to time. Now the explosion in the Forbidden Forest is like reminding Maureen that Lucas has not yet made a move on the smoke monster. It is another weekend, and the sun rarely peeks out, slightly dispelling some of the cold air. Many students take this opportunity to play snowballs in the snow. Maureen and Hugo were also playing snowballs with James, Albus and Lily. After Anran came, Maureen did not continue to play. I saw a 6th grade boy with green grass on his head today. Anran now happily runs to Maureen every day and tells Maureen what strange spells she saw in the school infirmary and how to treat them. Anran will go to the school infirmary whenever she is free and learn healing magic from Madame Pomfrey. Madame Pomfrey is very happy to pick up this treasure of Anran. A rare healing magus is extremely rare. Anran learns those healing magics very easily, which makes Madame Pomfrey full of praise. Green grass on his head? How did he do it? Maureen yawned, turned a stone into a sofa on the snow, and then sat down to bask in the sun. Hugo followed him. I don't know. I heard that it was because his girlfriend had been dating another boy without telling him. He was angry and wanted to cast a curse on his girlfriend, but it didn't work. Instead, his girlfriend turned his hair into green grass. Anran thought this was very funny. Is it like a mandrake? Hugo threw his school bag into the snow and asked lazily. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Mandrake is a doll-like plant that looks ugly and cries a lot. Its crying can be fatal. They have green leaves on their heads. Yes, the top of his head is green, like a green hat. When he came to the infirmary, I thought he was a potted plant. Anran said with a smile. Then how did you treat it? Maureen pointed his wand at the snow in front of him, and the snow quickly formed a fat snowman. It was Madame Pomfrey who treated it. She looked very happy. She cut off all the grass on the boy's head and said that the evil spell turned his hair into green grass, which brought the boy's resentment magic, and it can be used to make a peaceful breakup potion. Anran tilted her head and said, Peaceful breakup potion? What kind of potion is that? Hugo asked puzzled. Anran explained, it is a special potion. Madame Pomfrey said that senior student lovers often have conflicts, and every time they break up by quarreling, they will inevitably curse each other. The school infirmary is often filled with such couples who are cursed because of breaking up. She is working with Professor Theodore to study the peaceful breakup potion, so that those young lovers can calm down and part ways in peace. It's really fresh. I have heard of love potions that make people fall in love, but I have never heard of potions that make people break up. Hugo was surprised. Yes, she also said that once the research is successful, she will recommend it to all couples in the school, just in case. After drinking the peaceful breakup potion, you won't think about revenge on your ex, especially in June every year, which is the graduation season for 7th graders, when couples have the most conflicts and problems. And Rand said, Madame Pomfrey is really thoughtful. Maureen said with her head tilted. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358, Centaurs. In fact, you can prepare a bottle of peaceful breakup potion. Hugo patted Maureen's shoulder with a sly smile. Give it to Magatha, so she won't bother you. Don't talk nonsense, Hugo. Maureen said. Not yet, Madame Pomfrey hasn't developed it yet. And Rand thought for a while, and then said, and I don't think Maureen needs to use this, he has the best temper I've ever seen. Well really. Maureen was a little embarrassed by being praised like this. By the way, who is the girl you like? I didn't see you go to find her, I only saw Magatha. And Rand looked at Maureen curiously. Maureen blushed slightly, trying to focus on the snowman in front of him, muttering, no, don't think too much. Speaking of which, the girl he is with every day is Rand. But Rand didn't seem to realize this. Hugo said with a smile, Maureen has always been troubled by Magatha's problem. Magatha uses a magnifying glass to look at him every day, which is very annoying. If it were you, you wouldn't be happy either. You would be scared when going to the toilet and taking a shower. Now you don't dare to go to the public bathroom outside, for fear of running into Magatha. Maureen grumbled and waved his wand, turning the snowman in front of him into a snow leopard. Maureen, come quickly. The snowball fight is not over yet. Lily shouted from a distance. James and Albus also shouted and provoked Hugo from a distance. I like weekends. Maureen, shall we continue? Hugo rubbed his hands and glanced at Lily and the others not far away. We can definitely beat them together. Come on, I was dealing with them alone just now. Maureen spread his hands. Their snowball fights are different from those of Muggles. Muggles use their hands, and they use magic. Use magic to condense snowballs into various shapes, let snowballs fly around, and even make various simple snowmen. Let these snowmen come alive to help. Hugo's control magic is a mess. If Maureen hadn't been there to help, he would have been buried in the snow. I tried my best. I used the spells you taught me to deal with them. Didn't you see that I knocked James down with a snow plate just now? Hugo didn't feel guilty at all. On the contrary, he was very happy. Yes, if I hadn't used the gorilla to knock off the head of James's sled dog, you would have been dragged up by the sled dog and circled around the willow tree. Maureen couldn't help laughing. When everyone was playing snowball fights, they would perform various transformation spells on snowballs. In the distance, there were running snow dogs, snow leopards, and snow lions everywhere on the snow. These ice and snow animals bumped into each other, and it was easy to knock off their heads or limbs. From time to time, a student would be thrown into the snow. But when Maureen leads Hugo to fight against others, they will not suffer any loss, even if Hugo's snowman is a big trick. It's a pity that I don't know these magics yet. And Rand said enviously. Students in the 1st and 2nd grades can only make snowballs or something, and they are at a disadvantage when playing with students like James and Albus, who can perform intermediate transfiguration. Don't be discouraged, and Rand, come on, I'll teach you. Maureen swung his wand. Continue to fight them. I'll make a big snow bear to protect you, and you just need to know the levitation spell. They ran towards Lily again. Hey, and Ran, you're here too, let me tell you, it's very unlucky to be in a group with Hugo. Lily said with a smile. Hey, Lily, don't underestimate us. Hugo waved his wand and threw a snowball at Lily. But Lily smashed Hugo's snowball in one go. That won't do. Hugo. Lily put her hands on her hips and said to Ran, you can be in my group, and Ran, I will help you. Ran is in our group, Lily. Hugo patted Maureen on the shoulder, and we have Maureen, the runner-up in Transfiguration in the Dumbledore Cup. They played snowball fights for an entire afternoon, and were covered in snowflakes. Although Hugo said it so righteously, in fact, Hugo and Ran always hid behind Maureen. In the evening, everyone finally stopped and lay in the snow tiredly, not wanting to move anymore. Think about it, it's not that I didn't gain anything. At least my transfiguration has improved a lot. Hugo condensed the snowflakes in his hat, turned into a snow dog and jumped down. But at this time, Ran suddenly let out a light exclamation. "What's wrong?" Maureen asked. "Centaurs." Ran pointed to the edge of the forbidden forest and said. Maureen sat up and looked in the direction Ran pointed. Sure enough, at the edge of the forbidden forest, he saw a tall brown centaur standing under a beech tree whose branches were weighed down by snowflakes, watching the situation on the castle side. Maureen recognized the brown centaur. It was this centaur who saved them from the hands of the smoke monster that night in the forbidden forest. The centaur's name was Odea. When he saw Maureen, he seemed very irritable and asked Maureen to leave the forbidden forest. "He seems to be looking at us." And Ran whispered. Odea was indeed looking at them, but he was standing next to the tree trunk, revealing half of his body. If you didn't look carefully, you wouldn't notice his presence. This time, he didn't have a bow and arrow in his hand, but put it on his back, holding the tree trunk with one hand, as if he was thinking about something, and would look up and glance at them from time to time. However, in order to prevent the last time when the smoke monster in the forbidden forest rushed out to catch people, everyone tried to stay close to the open space on the castle side when playing snowballs, which was still a long distance away from the forbidden forest. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. By the way, Ran, 2 weeks ago, I remember Hagrid went to Madame Pomfrey to talk about the centaur's injuries. Do you know about that? Maureen asked. Ran thought for a moment and said in a low voice, I don't know, but Madame Pomfrey kept her mouth shut when she came back. The day before yesterday, when Senior Sister Mary accidentally mentioned the centaur's healing magic, Madame Pomfrey looked very annoyed and said bluntly that the centaurs were a group of self-righteous guys, and their healing magic was just their own propaganda. She would not treat the centaurs anymore in the future. Madame Pomfrey would actually say that? I thought she was very patient. Hugo was surprised. She is very patient with us, but she has a lot of opinions about the centaurs. Ran said pertinently. The number of students playing snowballs on the snow gradually decreased. After playing for an afternoon, many people returned to the castle to take a bath and prepare for dinner. Are you three going back? It's getting late. Lily shouted from a distance. Go back right away. Maureen and Hugo responded. They climbed up from the snow. Lily had already gone back to the castle with James and the others. Maureen looked at the centaur again. Although he was very curious about the centaur's injury, he didn't want to delve into it because the centaur was very unfriendly to Maureen and he didn't want to make trouble for himself. Why do you think the centaur is looking at us? Is he trying to do something bad to us? Hugo said suspiciously. I don't know. Anyway, the centaur didn't welcome me and wanted to drive me out of the forbidden forest. Maureen waved his wand to clean the snow off his body. Don't take it to heart, man. The centaur doesn't welcome anyone. Hugo yawned. Ran suddenly pulled Maureen's clothes and said, that Odea is coming towards us. Maureen turned around and saw that the centaur was leaving the forbidden forest step by step and coming towards this side. The centaur's footsteps were very solid, and every step he took in the snow was very steady. Maureen and his friends definitely couldn't walk so steadily in the snow. Usually they had to take one deep step and one shallow step. Oh my god. Let's run quickly, the centaurs are coming to catch us. Hugo exclaimed, I don't want to help them shovel horse manure in the middle of winter. Wait a minute, what is he doing? That action is. Maureen looked at Odea in confusion. Odea walked towards them, putting his right hand on his left chest, and his eyes never left Maureen and the other two. Chapter 359, Centaurs and Hagrid. What's that action for? Did he take a fancy to our ability to play snowballs just now and prepare to declare war on us? Hugo asked somewhat anxiously. Of course not. Maureen said helplessly. The centaurs were not so bored that they would play snowballs with a few children. Maureen pondered for a moment and said, that action, let me think about it. I read it in a book last time. It seemed to represent the centaurs lowering their guard and coming to negotiate peace. Negotiation? What is he negotiating with us about? We don't want to start a war with him. Hugo took a step back, but he didn't stand firmly and fell in the snow. Let's go quickly. Hugo got up with a curse. He really didn't like the centaurs. Last time, the centaurs shot and injured students with bows and arrows, making the centaurs one of the creatures to be boycotted in the eyes of many students. But the centaurs walked very fast in the snow. After all, he had 4 legs, and each step he took was a long distance. He quickly approached them and stopped about 30 meters away from them. Odia's angular face looked very solemn, and then he nodded solemnly to Maureen and the others. "What are the centaurs doing?" Anrin asked curiously. "I don't know." Maureen was not sure. He was thinking about whether to nod in return or take Anrin and Hugo back to the castle. In the distance, Hagrid walked out of the hut and shouted loudly to Odia. "No. Odia, I said no." Hagrid strode over here. He looked a little impatient and walked in a hurry. Every step he took would leave a big footprint on the snow, and snowflakes would splash behind him. "I have no ill intentions, Hagrid, you know this." Odia still put his right hand on his left chest and said seriously. "I know you mean no harm, but this matter is non-negotiable. I can't let students go to the Forbidden Forest again." Hagrid had already run over. He walked in front of Maureen and the other 2, then waved at them and said, "You 3, hurry back to the castle. It's time to have dinner." Maureen and the other 2 looked at each other, thinking that it was not appropriate to stay any longer, and were about to leave, but Odia looked very anxious. He raised his hoof and put it down again, and ran a few steps towards Maureen and the others. His right hand was always on his left chest, and there was a hint of urgency in his eyes. "Wait, please don't leave yet," Odia said to the 3 of them uneasily, and then turned to look at Hagrid. "I swear in the name of Mars, Hagrid, I will ensure the safety of the fowl." This made Maureen and the others embarrassed. With Hagrid around, they were not afraid that the centaur would do anything dangerous, but this matter was a bit strange. The centaur seemed to be in trouble and actually wanted to ask them for help. "Should we leave?" Hugo asked in a low voice. "Let's see what happened first." Maureen wanted to know what happened to the centaur. Hagrid looked very angry. When he spoke, snowflakes fell from his shaggy beard. "I asked Madame Pomfrey to help last time, but you refused her help. If you were smart, you would know that Madame Pomfrey is a very skilled wizard." "I know Madame Pomfrey's medical skills, Hagrid, believe me," Odia said seriously, "but she can't help with this matter. You didn't even let her try." Hagrid shouted angrily, his voice sounded particularly deep in the snow. "If even Madame Pomfrey can't cure it, who do you count on? This little kid. Yes, the trajectory of Mercury reflects her fate. She is a unique fowl." Odia glanced at Anrin, who was curiously looking at Odia. Seeing Odia glance over, she timidly showed a friendly smile. Odia even nodded politely to Anrin in return. No matter how different she is only a first-grade child, not to mention that there is an unknown thing waiting for her in the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid raised his voice. "I will not let students approach the Forbidden Forest until you have dealt with that matter," Hagrid said, and turned around and waved to Maureen and the others again. "Go back quickly, don't worry about these things." But Maureen and the others did not move. "You don't understand, Hagrid, she is a fowl favored by Mercury." Odia looked at and ran, hesitant to speak. "Don't talk to me, what the name of Mars, the favor of Mercury? It's all nonsense." Hagrid was very angry. "I'm tired of your attitude as a centaur. Every time I try my best to say good things for you, but you always embarrass me in front of other wizards, you self-righteous arrogant people. Hagrid, you are too much." Odia felt insulted, and his front hoof dug the snow, splashing a lot of snowflakes. The latest novels are first published on 69shushu.com. "That's not too much, Odia. It was your attitude towards Madame Pomfrey that was too much. You feel insulted now, don't you? Then why didn't you feel it was too much when you insulted Madame Pomfrey?" Hagrid waved his fist, and his thick robes rustled. "We didn't insult Madame Pomfrey," Odia emphasized. "We would never insult the professors at Hogwarts. Any professor deserves our respect because they are responsible for imparting knowledge to the fowls, and people who impart knowledge should be respected." But she felt insulted. Hagrid became angrier and angrier as he spoke. He waved his hands angrily. "I asked her to help you, but what about you? As soon as we met, you didn't even let her check it, and you told her directly that her healing skills didn't work? Have you ever respected her? We are telling the facts. Her healing magic is superb, and we have always respected her for that, but she really can't do anything about this matter." "Facts? I'll tell you what the facts are." Hagrid raised his voice and said, "The fact is, I will never speak well of you again. You hurt my students and refused to tell the truth. I found someone to help you, and you directly refused. I will never believe you again. You are not allowed to leave the Forbidden Forest again. Even if something goes wrong, it's your own fault. Hagrid, I thought you could understand. Odia's eyes suddenly dimmed, and the majestic aura on his body disappeared, as if he suddenly became helpless. His voice sounded a little low and depressed. Our vision is blocked, and the stars make us collapse. We need your help. Hagrid's chest kept rising and falling. He looked at Odia, as if he thought of something, and his face was a little sad. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Hagrid muttered a little uneasily. His words just now were a little too heavy. In the past, he always made friends with the creatures in the Forbidden Forest and tried his best to help those companions in the Forbidden Forest. He obviously didn't want to see the centaurs suffer misfortune. It's a bit strange, don't you think? Maureen. Hugo didn't look so scared. At least now we understand why Madame Pomfrey is very angry with the centaurs. Maureen looked at the centaurs, and then at Enrin, and became more and more curious. Why did the centaurs think Enrin could help them when they didn't give Madame Pomfrey a chance to treat them? Chapter 360, The Centaur's Request. Enrin asked quietly, why would a centaur say that? If Madame Pomfrey, who is so powerful, can't do it, what can I do? She has only been learning healing magic from Madame Pomfrey for less than a month. Although she has mastered a lot of healing magic with her unique talent, it is still unrealistic for her to be able to do it alone. She doesn't know many spells. Even if she is a natural healing magus, she still needs to use a wand when healing some evil spells. I've been thinking about this too. Maureen said quietly. Hagrid asked Maureen and the others what they were wondering. I heard from Madame Pomfrey that Enran is a rare healing magus, but she is only in the 1st grade, and Madame Pomfrey is also a healing magus. You didn't let Madame Pomfrey try, why did you decide it was her? She is very special. Odia said. Special. Maureen thought about it thoughtfully, remembering that Enran was captured by the smoke monster when he was playing by the lake next to the Quidditch field last time. The arithmetic magic of Professor Victor and Magatha showed that the distribution of the big pit deep in the Forbidden Forest was based on Enran. Did the centaurs know something? Odia looked at Enran, and then suddenly turned his eyes to Maureen, just like him, very special. Maureen was slightly stunned. Why did he bring him up? Maureen. Hagrid was obviously a little surprised by Odia's words. He took a closer look at Maureen and was naturally familiar with Maureen, who often got into trouble. Yes, he is a person we can't see. Odia stared at Maureen. Hugo couldn't help but whisper to Maureen, why is he lying with his eyes open? Staring at you and saying he can't see you. That's how they are. It may be related to me being invisible. Although Maureen didn't know what the invisible man meant, he knew that he couldn't be divined. Divination is exactly what the centaurs are best at? Okay, if you insist, but I need to ask her opinion. Hagrid seemed to be persuaded by Odia, and strode towards Enran. His dark eyes looked at Enran hesitantly, a little puzzled and conflicted. You should have heard what Odia said. The centaurs have suffered a great change. Many centaurs have been injured. They have been injured by a very powerful curse. Hagrid spoke hesitantly. He originally did not intend to tell these words to the students. It was not a wise choice to let the students go to the Forbidden Forest. Curse? What curse is it, Hagrid? Hugo asked. I don't know. Maybe the centaurs know, but they won't say it. They like to keep secrets. Hagrid glanced at Odia, who was waiting not far away, looking very dissatisfied, and then continued, I originally asked Madame Pomfrey to check if they could break the curse, but they insisted that Madame Pomfrey couldn't help them. This is all nonsense. They didn't even give Madame Pomfrey a chance to check. In short, they said that only Enran could help. Hagrid was very puzzled by the fact that the centaurs chose Enran to help. He didn't know what special abilities Enran had. But what can I do to help? Enran didn't quite understand. She rubbed her hands and asked in confusion, I have to rely on Maureen to help me with snowball fights. That's what I want to know, but they don't like to talk too much. They know things, but they always cover them up. I said before that their personalities will kill themselves sooner or later, and I was right, Hagrid complained. Is it related to that smoke monster, Professor? Maureen asked. Smoke man? I haven't seen it. Hagrid shook his head. I don't even know if the smoke man you mention exists. Except for Maureen and Enran, the only people who have seen the black smoke are the centaurs and dwarves. No one else has seen it, But if the centaurs don't want to say it, even Hagrid and the others won't say it. Hagrid doesn't know what this thing is. I don't know if it's right to do this, but I think, how should I put it? The centaurs are not bad by nature. They are in trouble and I really want to help them, but after the accident you had in the Forbidden Forest last time, I think it's unwise to let you get close to the Forbidden Forest, so I rejected the centaur's request. As a professor of care of magical creatures at Hogwarts, Hagrid knew that he had to be responsible for his students and couldn't take them to the depths of the Forbidden Forest casually, especially since there was a potential unknown danger in the Forbidden Forest. After a pause, Hagrid continued, "The centaurs have been wandering around the edge of the Forbidden Forest. They have been waiting for almost a month, waiting for you, Anron. They just didn't get the chance to chat with you alone. I have been stopping them. If you hadn't come out to play snowballs today, Professor, if I can help the centaurs, I can try," Anron said seriously. "Do you agree?" Hagrid was a little surprised. "I thought you would be scared when you were caught and taken to the Forbidden Forest last time." "Oh, Professor, I'm not scared." Anron looked at Odia, who nodded solemnly to Anron again. Anron smiled, then turned his gaze back and said, "It was the centaurs who saved Maureen and me last time. Now they are in trouble, and I think we should help them, right, Maureen?" "That's right." Maureen didn't object to this. Although the centaurs did not welcome him, it was an indisputable fact that the centaurs saved them. "Well, since you agree, that's the best. It's crazy that I would agree to this request. No matter what, I will protect you," Hagrid muttered. He felt that it was a terrible idea to let Anron go to the Forbidden Forest again. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. "Professor, I'll go too," Maureen said impatiently. "I must ensure Anron's safety." "You can't go, Maureen. Professor Kane asked us to keep an eye on you. You always do all kinds of dangerous things." Hagrid directly rejected Maureen's request. "But, Professor, what if this matter has something to do with the smoke monster? I mean, I have seen it, right? I can give some advice or something," Maureen said hurriedly. He was also helpless now. He was regarded as the #1 disturbed person by the professors. If his toes were slightly out of line, he would be invited to drink tea by Professor Kane. This was not something to be proud of. "That won't work either. I'm just taking Anron to the centaur's territory and then back. We won't meet any smoke monsters." Actually, Odia came over, staring at Maureen anxiously, and then said, "Hagrid, we've been waiting for him for a while." Hagrid frowned. "Are you waiting for him?" "Yes, although we can't see him, but we want to invite him over because he may be able to help." When Odia said this, he said it in an uneasy tone. After he said this, his face was a little flustered, and it can be seen that he was reluctant to say such words. "You welcome me again now?" Maureen raised his eyebrows. "Of course we don't welcome you, not at all." Odia dug his hooves in the snow twice more, and then nodded to Maureen solemnly, "But we invite you and Anron to go together." "Oh." Maureen curled his lips and couldn't help but complain, "I'm really touched by this statement." Chapter 361 I Can't See You. The way centaurs talk can really make people angry. They either don't tell any secrets or they speak very bluntly. They wanted to invite Maureen to go, but they didn't know how to be polite. For example, they said some hypocritical polite words like, "Oh, you misunderstood, we actually welcome you." Instead, they just said, "Of course we don't welcome you, but we implore you to go." What kind of invitation is this? If it were someone else, no one would be willing to go. But Maureen was more casual. He didn't take the centaur's words to heart. Hugo immediately shouted from the side, "I'm going too, Hagrid." "Nonsense, you can't go." Hagrid shook his head. "I won't let you go into the Forbidden Forest. Your mother told me to watch you last time. This is not fair. You let Maureen and Anron go together." Hugo complained. "They are different. The Forbidden Forest is very dangerous. I can't protect the three of you at the same time." Hagrid said seriously, "I don't plan to let either of them go. You should go back to the castle." Hugo looked dissatisfied. But Odia suddenly turned around and said to Hugo, "Mars has not reached the octave orbit yet." "What?" Hugo was stunned. "Mars has not reached the octave orbit yet," Odia repeated. "I can hear what you said. I'm asking what this means," Hugo asked. But Odia didn't continue. "What do you mean? Why do you only say half of the words?" Hugo was a little annoyed. People who only say half of the words are the most annoying. "Okay, Hugo, it's useless to ask more questions if you know them. You know how annoying it is to deal with them. Hagrid was used to the way centaurs spoke. He could now automatically ignore all kinds of inexplicable words that came out of centaurs' mouths. Centaurs know a lot of things, but they don't say things very clearly. If they don't want to say it, it's useless to ask more. But Hugo wanted to ask more. Hugo, why don't you go to the castle to check what this sentence means? I think there must be a record in astronomy. Hagrid urged, just treat it as an astronomy homework, please be kind and don't make trouble. Hugo was persuaded. He looked at Odia in confusion, and then walked towards the castle muttering all the way. Okay, let's go. No matter what, you two follow me closely. It's getting late now, I must be confused, I really shouldn't agree to this. Hagrid shook his head. Odia slowed down his pace, because Maureen and Anrin walked very slowly. He also deliberately slowed down his pace. The sunset was half hidden in the sky. Wait for me first, I'll get a bow and an umbrella. When Hagrid passed the cabin, he asked them to wait here, and ran towards the cabin in the hunting ground. Maureen suddenly felt very uneasy again. He looked at the sky and found that the sunset on the horizon seemed a little unreal. Damn. That feeling emerged again. He felt something was not good, and when he had this feeling, it was usually not a good thing. He had discovered a pattern. Every time he went to that place, it was at dusk, when the sunset was about to fall and the night was about to come. Then, if he looked up carelessly, he would see two moons. Can we go there tomorrow morning? It's not a good idea to go there at dusk. Maureen said hesitantly. Why? And Ran asked curiously. It's hard to explain, but I have a bad feeling anyway. Maureen shook his head. Since he went to the Forbidden Forest to chase the captured and ran, he had not been to the Forbidden Forest in the evening, because students were forbidden to approach the Forbidden Forest, not to mention that he was the #1 disturbed person and the professors were watching him. Odia had already lowered his right hand from his left chest. He also glanced at the clouds in the west. There was some doubt in his brown pupils. Then he took off the quiver behind him and took out a kerosene lamp the size of only 2 fingers from the small pocket next to the quiver. This kerosene lamp was really a little small, but very delicate. The flickering flame inside was golden and looked very active. The elders asked me to give this to you at dusk. Odia handed the pocket kerosene lamp in his hand to Maureen. Elder. Maureen took the kerosene lamp hesitantly and asked, why did your elders give me this lamp? To provide lighting. Odia glanced at Maureen, then looked away uneasily. I don't know, I can't see you. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen looked at Odia's uneasy look and felt quite funny. Hugo was right. Odia was really lying with his eyes open. He took the golden kerosene lamp and felt a very strange warmth coming from the kerosene lamp. Then the uneasy feeling that made him uneasy quickly dissipated, as if he had jumped into a stove and his whole body was warm. What kind of flame is this? It seems very strange. Maureen looked at the sunset in the sky again. The sunset seemed to have returned to normal and no longer gave him a vague feeling. This kerosene lamp seemed a little extraordinary. Could it be that the elder knew his concerns? There were already a few sparse stars hanging in the sky. Odia was looking at those stars, his face getting paler and paler. Hearing Maureen's question, he said uneasily again, I don't know, I can't see you. Oh, you don't have to look at me all the time, it's impolite. Maureen said unhappily, look at whoever you like, but don't bother to look at me all the time. To be honest, you are not the first person I have seen who likes to peek at me. It turns out that I am not good looking enough for you guys who are talking nonsense. Maureen was often followed by Magatha, because Magatha also liked to use arithmetic magic to calculate him, and she and Odia obviously had the same purpose. No, Maureen, I think you are still very good looking. Anrin said with a smile. Thank you. Maureen also laughed. Unran didn't understand what nice to look at meant, but he was very happy that Unran would say that. Odia neighed in a low voice and pawed with his front hooves. He turned his eyes away from Maureen and looked at the stars in the sky, but he couldn't help but glance at Maureen, then turned away palely, and then stole another glance, and so on. Okay, let's go. Hagrid had hurriedly returned with his bow and arrow. In his hand, he was also holding a large kerosene lamp, which was completely different from the pocket kerosene lamp in Maureen's hand, and the light was still very bright. He looked at the small lantern in Maureen's hand and muttered, good, you brought a kerosene lamp, but this lamp is a little small. You'd better put it away and take out your wand, just in case. Hagrid put a pink umbrella in his pocket, and then went into the Forbidden Forest with Odia. Chapter 362, The Centaurs of the Forbidden Forest. It turned out that Hagrid's worry was unnecessary, because after they entered the Forbidden Forest, 4 more centaurs appeared. They seemed to have been waiting here, and each centaur held a bow and arrow in his hand. "Great, Odia, you invited her." A snow-white centaur jumped twice in excitement. When the other centaurs saw Maureen coming in, they also showed eager expressions on their faces. Then when they saw Maureen, all the centaurs took a breath of cold air, and the eager expressions immediately disappeared. The atmosphere suddenly became a little depressing. All the centaurs looked at Maureen uneasily. 2 centaurs seemed to want to raise the bows and arrows in their hands, but put them down halfway. "Oh, thank you for your warm welcome to me. I am really touched." Maureen looked at the bows and arrows in the other party's hands, and then greeted them in a familiar way. "Anyway, we are used to it, so let it be." Several horse hooves were digging on the ground, and the sound of horses was still coming out of the centaurs' mouths. "Sorry, we can't see you, but you are a guest." The white centaur was a little anxious. He also looked up at the stars in the sky, and then his face became even paler. Although he was originally a white centaur, the white horse looked very young, and his hair was also silver white. The snow on his head was not as bright as his hair. He was obviously more lively than Odia, who was a dull guy. He came over with hooves and shook hands with Maureen happily. "It's an honor to meet you. My name is Garrett." The white horse bowed slightly to Maureen. "My name is Maureen." And Maureen looked at Garrett curiously. "Of course I know you, Maureen. Briar, we can all see you," Garrett said happily. Then he turned around and looked at Maureen. "I'm also very happy that you can come." Garrett stretched out his hand and shook hands with Maureen with some trepidation. As soon as Maureen held his 2 fingers, Garrett couldn't wait to pull it back, as if he was afraid that he would not be able to stop touching him for a long time. This action really showed his happiness. Maureen shrugged. "Hagrid, I thought you wouldn't agree to them coming." Garrett hesitated. Hagrid muttered unhappily beside him, "Why didn't Saturn or Pluto tell you the reason?" All the centaurs looked at the sky and became anxious again. Maureen didn't know how to answer, and they quickly continued to walk into the Forbidden Forest. Because of Maureen and Maureen, the centaurs deliberately slowed down their pace. After walking for about half an hour, the woods in the Forbidden Forest had become more and more dense, and the ground was not easy to walk on after snowing. They didn't go far in half an hour. Maureen simply stretched out his wand, ready to make the road easier to walk. But when the centaurs saw Maureen take out his wand, they became more impatient. "What are you going to do?" Odia looked at Maureen warily. "Casting magic, do you still need to ask?" Maureen waved his wand, and a dead branch in the snow flew over. "We don't like wizards of unknown origin to cast magic in the Forbidden Forest," Odia said. "That's a pity." Maureen glanced at Odia and ignored him. He tapped the branches, and the branches began to shake and turned into a simple sled. "We only have 2 legs, and we envy you for having 4 hooves." Maureen pulled Maureen to sit on the sled. "If we don't hurry up, we may not be able to get back at midnight." "He's right, we're walking too slowly. The snow is too difficult for the 2 of them to walk on. At this speed, we won't be able to reach you until midnight." Hagrid nodded. "The Forbidden Forest is not exclusive to you. We wizards have the right to do our own things. You'd better know this." Odia hesitated and didn't speak again. "Do you need them to help pull the sled, Maureen?" Hagrid glanced at Odia and other centaurs. "If necessary, these centaurs would naturally do it. We are not mules," Odia said angrily. "Centaurs are very proud and it is impossible for them to stoop to do these things. You invited them." Hagrid was also very annoyed. He raised his voice and said in a tough tone, "I don't want to bring them to the Forbidden Forest. This kind of place is not for them to come. You either carry them or pull them. Otherwise, we will go back." Odia looked a little angry. The 5 centaurs looked at each other. Obviously, no one was willing to do such a humble thing for them. The latest novels are published on the 6th and 9th books. Odia's chest kept rising and falling because of anger, but after all, they came to find help. It was really unreasonable to let 2 children trudge through the snow for several hours. After a moment, he seemed to have chosen to compromise. He reluctantly untied the rope from the quiver behind him and prepared to tie the sled. But Maureen waved his hand. "Oh, I don't need you to pull the sled." Maureen tapped the sled with his wand, and the sled moved. "But thank you for your kindness. It turns out that it is still very beneficial for wizards to cast magic in the Forbidden Forest." Morin sled carrying Enran and the other two had already rushed out. He turned around and shouted to Odia, "You don't have to pull the sled, but at least lead the way." Odia's expression finally eased. He looked greatly relieved. Pulling a sled was an insult to them. He was very grateful that Morin chose to use magic instead of asking him to bend down to pull it. Now they could travel much faster. Morin's sled was inspired by Weasley's sled elk. Last Christmas, the sled invented by Weasley could run around the whole room without hindrance. Morin specially asked Arnok for advice last time. Arnok told him how to cast this kind of magic, so he is now familiar with these practical magics and has a way to do it. The centaurs ran at full speed, very fast, not inferior to Morin at all. They also surrounded Morin and ran with ease, protecting them in the middle, and there was almost no need to worry about any dangerous animals attacking them. Odia led the way. As for Hagrid, a giant who took 3 or 4 steps to catch up with, there was no worry that he would fall behind. About 20 minutes later, the sled slid over a steep slope, and the trees in the Forbidden Forest began to become more and more dense. Then there was a sound of horse hooves in front of them. They seemed to have arrived at the territory of the centaurs. Kerosene lamps were hung on the trees at intervals. These lamps emitted bright light, dispelling the darkness of the woods. There seemed to be a bonfire on the snow in the distance, and there were many shadows of centaurs walking around. Odia let out a strange neigh, and the centaurs in the distance heard his neigh and responded. 2 centaurs were running quickly to meet them. "Odia, you are back. How is it? Did you invite them this time?" The older red centaur in the lead asked anxiously. "They're here, Tries." Odia pointed to Morin and Anran sitting on the sled not far behind him. "Great, this is the most gratifying thing today." The centaur named Tries smiled. He asked the same question every day, but the answer he got every day was disappointing. Hagrid had already strode over to negotiate with the centaur, while Maureen and Anran climbed down the sled and looked around curiously. Chapter 363, The Territory of the Centaurs. More centaurs in the distance seemed to have received the news and gathered around. Many centaurs looked at Anran with respect, and then looked at Morin with suspicion, switching between the two expressions. "Okay, let's go over there," Hagrid said to Morin and Anran. They walked forward. The road was very solid, like a cobblestone road. It was trampled by so many horses' hooves every day, so it would not work if it was not solid enough. There were many stables made of branches around, which seemed to be the resting place for centaurs. The sheds were built with some special vines, with branches hanging down like door curtains. Some branches of the stables were pulled up, and several centaurs stood in the sheds, looking at them. The centaurs' stables were similar to their human rooms, with tables, stoves, and kettles, but no chairs. There were many bows and arrows and furniture such as kerosene lamp ropes hanging on the walls. Morin also saw many foals on the way. Some of these foals were shorter than him and ran, blinking their big eyes and looking at them curiously. Compared to those tall and mighty adult centaurs, the foals only looked at Morin with curiosity. They had not yet learned the divination of adult centaurs, so they would not be selectively blind to Morin's existence like Odia and others, and they would not have any uneasy looks. 2 older centaurs were standing by the campfire waiting for them. Many centaurs surrounded them and respected the 2 older centaurs. One of them had a brown-red horse body, red hair and beard, and the other centaur had silver-gold hair and a silver-maned horse body. When Hagrid came over, the brown-red centaur said in a low and sad voice, "Hagrid, thank you for letting them come. I don't know if this is a good idea, Ronan." When Hagrid saw the 2 centaurs, his expression was obviously happier. He said to the other centaur, "Hello, Fizzarin." "Hello, Hagrid." Fizzarin's voice was very deep, and he had a pair of amazingly blue eyes. "We are desperate, Hagrid," Ronan said with a bleak look. "Ronan, we must believe these 2 kids, they can do this." Fezzilan comforted. "This is Ronan, the leader of the centaurs. He is Fezzilan, and he used to be a professor in our school." Hagrid introduced them to Morin and Anran. He then said to Ronan and Fezzilan, "As for them, you should know them very well." "Hello." Ronan came over. He was very tall, so he could only bend down slightly to shake hands with Anran, and then shook hands with Morin. He looked at Morin with a little uneasiness, but he didn't make a fuss like Garrett just now. "Hello, our invisible guest." Fezzilan smiled at Morin. Unlike other centaurs, he didn't look at Morin with an uneasy look, but greeted him very calmly and even curiously. "Hello." Morin responded politely, and then asked, "What trouble are you in?" Why do you want and ran to help? Ronan looked up at the sky and sighed slightly. I can't see Venus tonight. Maureen also looked up at the sky. He did see Venus. Although the direction he saw it might be different from others, the Venus he saw was very bright. Is your trouble that you can't see Venus? Maureen asked in confusion. Fezalin shook his head. We are good at observing the stars at night. The trajectory of Venus indicates. Fezalin, we should reveal too much? Ronan interrupted Fezalin. He glanced at Maureen inadvertently, feeling a little depressed. Ronan, we must make a choice. You can choose to take the secrets you see to the grave, but what about other tribesmen? Keeping secrets has never been easy for us centaurs. If the fate we see can be interfered with, I am willing to try. Fezalin emphasized. You are wrong. We have all sworn to this. Ronan looked at Maureen, especially someone we cannot see. Then I am willing to be wrong once. Fezalin raised his voice. He is the invisible man recorded in our astrological stone wall. We should not be afraid of this. Maureen did not understand what Fezalin and Ronan were talking about, but he understood the word invisible man. What is an invisible man? Maureen asked. He had not yet found an answer to this question. Bloody Baronhide said something about a real invisible man, and he felt more and more unfamiliar with the word invisible man. If the invisible man does not only mean that he cannot be foreseen by divination, then what does it mean? I can't answer this directly. The astrological signs on the stone wall tell us to keep a close eye on this person, but we can't see you at all. A person who cannot be seen makes all the centaurs panic. Fezalin could not give Maureen a satisfactory answer. Maureen was a little disappointed. He could only ask, so what trouble did you encounter? A terrible curse. Ronan closed his eyes and sighed deeply. The centaurs around were getting restless and many of them were neighing in low voices, and the sound echoed in the woods, sounding a little sad. What kind of curse? And Rand said a little awkwardly, I don't know much about spells. I just learned healing magic from Madame Pomfrey. Why don't you let Madame Pomfrey try? She can't do it. Ronan shook his head and looked up at the stars again. Maybe only you can help with this curse. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. What happened specifically? Maureen asked. Ronan didn't answer, and Fizarin's blue eyes dimmed for a moment, and the other centaurs also lowered their heads. Venus hasn't entered orbit yet. Ronan glanced at his people and said sadly. What does this mean? Maureen asked puzzled. Fizarin looked up, and there were more and more stars in the sky. The moon was shining wide, and it fell on the forbidden forest, as if it was covered with a layer of silver frost. Venus has not yet entered orbit. Fezalin repeated. Venus? Can you see Venus now? Didn't you say you couldn't see it just now? Maureen asked in confusion. Our seeing is different from your understanding of seeing. Fezalin shook his head. Maureen wanted to ask more about the difference, but when he thought of his pitiful astronomy knowledge that Professor Sinistra paid special attention to every day, he decided not to ask, because he wouldn't understand it anyway. We can wait for Venus to enter orbit. Ronan looked at the centaurs around him with some sadness. All the centaurs looked panicked. They gathered together one by one, as if waiting for something terrible to happen. This made Maureen even more curious. Chapter 364 The Curse of the Centaurs. All the centaurs leaned on each other, moving around restlessly, and the mothers with foals held their children tightly in their arms. Everyone looked up at the sky from time to time, perhaps to see the trajectory of Venus. Maureen was not very clear about the stars in the sky, and he could not understand those messy stars, but there was a tense atmosphere in the air. Professor, what's going on? What are they waiting for? And Ran asked in a low voice. You will know later. Hagrid looked at the centaurs with great sympathy. He should know the situation of the centaurs. Hagrid was the only wizard in Hogwarts who knew the centaurs best. For a while, no one spoke again. The centaurs seemed to be waiting for the so-called Venus orbit. At a certain moment, there was a panic among the centaurs. Their faces were already terrified, and some centaurs held their companions' hands tightly. Then a shrill voice cut through the night sky. Ee. This was the neighing of a centaur. The sound was extremely sharp, as if it was in great pain. It echoed through the woods and frightened Maureen and the others. They looked towards the source of the sound and found that a gray-brown pony had fallen to the ground. He neighed miserably and kept scratching his body, as if there were some bugs biting him inside. His face turned red, and from time to time he raised his fists to hit the ground and hit his head against the trees next to him, making a heart-pounding sound. All the centaurs took a step back in panic, watching the pony screaming, but no one went up to help. Everyone seemed very scared. No, Caven, my child. A centaur with long hair was about to rush over. She seemed to be the mother of the pony, but Odia stopped her. Let me do it, Kay, you step back. Odia, you know the consequences. Ronan grabbed Odia's hand and said sternly. He's my child. I'm willing to take his place. Odia's hoof stomped hard on the ground. A trace of determination appeared on his face. Without any hesitation, he broke free from Ronan's hand and rushed over to grab Calvin. Maureen and Anrin looked at each other. They didn't understand what Odia and Ronan meant, but they soon understood. The moment Odia touched Calvin's body, Odia's eyes bulged, and the veins on his forehead squirmed like worms. He screamed in pain, and his huge body fell down with a bang. His whole body twisted wildly on the ground, and his hooves were trotting restlessly on everything he touched. Take Calvin away. Quick! Odia roared in pain. Ronan quickly reached out and pulled Calvin up from the ground. Calvin had stopped twitching and seemed to have fainted. But Odia was getting more and more painful, and his miserable screams were even more terrifying than the sound made by Calvin. Odia's solid hoof kicked on the branch, leaving a big mark on the book. The debris of the tree trunk splashed out, and he began to hit the tree trunk with his head, breaking the skin on his head. What's wrong with him? Maureen stood up and asked, why don't you help? He needs to stop hurting himself. Can't help. Hagrid shook his head. Don't touch him, it's a very terrible curse. If you touch him, the pain will be transmitted to you. Anrin ran towards Colin with some worry. She touched Colin's forehead and then breathed a sigh of relief. He's fine, he just fainted from the pain. After a moment, Anrin asked anxiously again, then there is no way. We have tried everything. Ronan shook his head and handed Colin to Colin's mother Kay. Colin's mother whimpered, hugged her child tightly, and looked at Odia who was struggling on the ground with heartache. No. Odia. Colin's mother wiped her tears, her eyes were very helpless. Save him, Miss Anrin, please save my husband. Kay begged. I don't know how to save him. Anrin was a little confused. She didn't even know where this curse came from. But Ronan said you can. Kay cried. It's not me who said it, it's the stars that tell us that Anrin can touch this curse. Ronan whispered. You want Anrin to touch it? Maureen shook his head decisively. No. Hagrid said angrily, Anrin is just a child, how dare you have such an idea? What if something goes wrong? Sorry. Ronan said sadly, if she doesn't want to try, we won't force her. We protect any fowl. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet, and only Odia's heart-wrenching voice echoed in the woods. Anrin hesitated, looked at Odia who was struggling frantically on the ground, and said, how about I try it? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. No, Anrin, this is not a practical assignment for school. I dare not touch this kind of curse. It can be passed on to us wizards. Last time I touched a centaur who was cursed, and the pain was unbearable for me. Hagrid recalled that incident with some fear. It's like cruciatus. Maureen and Anrin looked at each other. Maureen knew what cruciatus was, but Anrin didn't know. Maureen shook his head at Anrin. How long will he be in pain? Maureen asked Ronan. 1 to 2 hours. Ronan said sadly, we centaurs are cursed. Every night when Venus enters orbit, one of our tribesmen will be chosen by the curse, and the body will experience great pain. When another tribesman touches it, the pain will be transmitted to others. So no one wants to be cursed, let alone touch the tribesman chosen by the curse. Unless the chosen one is her child. Fizarin sighed beside him, just like Colin tonight, he was unfortunately chosen, and Odia can only bear the pain for his son. Odia's screams were endless. He voluntarily touched Colin's body and suffered for his son. What kind of curse is this? Maureen couldn't help but feel surprised. How could this curse be so terrible? Anran listened to Odia's twisted crying, and she said reluctantly, what if? What if? Maybe the stars are right, Maureen. That's not necessarily true. The stars can also be wrong sometimes. Maureen said seriously. He had the deepest understanding of this, because the stars had never been right in front of him. Odia's voice was heartbreaking. His strong and powerful hoof had kicked a big hole in the branch of a big tree. The tree could no longer keep its balance and fell down with a click. A centaur quickly supported the big tree and pushed it to the other side. Maureen then discovered that there were many big trees that had just broken in this open space. This kind of pain had happened more than once or twice in the centaur tribe. Odia saved us, Maureen, I think we should help him. Isn't the purpose of our coming here to help them? Anran said seriously. Maureen certainly didn't want Anran to take risks, but many centaurs around him looked at Anran earnestly. They all believed that Anran could help them through this difficult time. He looked at Odea again. A centaur as strong as Odea was tortured by this curse. This curse was really terrible. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365 The Terrible Curse. Fear enveloped the entire centaur tribe. Everyone looked at Odea struggling in pain on the ground. These usually proud centaurs were helpless against this terrible curse. Even if they were not the ones to suffer tonight, what about tomorrow? What about the day after tomorrow? No one knew when they would be chosen. You can make him faint, maybe he won't feel the pain. Maureen suggested, I can cast a coma spell or something. It doesn't work. Fizarin shook his head in frustration. We picked a lot of sleeping grass in the woods. This grass is more effective than the coma spell, but it can't stop this curse. He will wake up in pain. The centaurs were helpless about this matter. This kind of pain can be transmitted, right? Maureen asked again. Yes, as long as you touch another member of the tribe, the pain will be transferred away. Fezalin pursed his lips and looked at Hagrid. Last time I was chosen, and Hagrid came to touch me without knowing it. He took the pain away from me. I had no choice but to touch Hagrid again to transfer the pain back to myself because of the pain I endured. Sorry. Hagrid said guiltily, that kind of pain is really. Don't blame yourself, Hagrid. Fezalin smiled palely. We won't let our friends in the Forbidden Forest get hurt. Fezalin's pain was transferred to Hagrid, and Hagrid couldn't stand it. Fezalin could only transfer this pain back. Anran hurriedly said, that's fine, I'll try it. If you are really worried about me, if I can't deal with this curse at that time, the rest of you can come to contact me again, right? The other centaurs looked at Anran gratefully, and Fezalin walked out and said, I can wait by the side at any time. If there's anything wrong, I will touch Anran immediately. Anran, are you really willing? Maureen asked hesitantly. If it were you, you would definitely be willing to try it, right? Anran looked at Molin seriously. Molin also looked at Anran. There was no impurity in Anran's clear eyes, pure and flawless. He suddenly understood why Anran gave him a very strange feeling, because if he encountered such a thing, he would also try it. The two of them had something in common. Okay, Anran, be careful. Molin nodded and said, I'll be next to you. Odea was still neighing in pain on the ground, his whole body was shaking. Fizarin shouted, Odea, Anran will come over to treat you. Try to restrain yourself and don't kick Anran. Odea bit his lips tightly. He heard what Fizarin said. Although he was very uncomfortable, he tried his best to hold down the horse's hoof this time. Anran walked over carefully, and Fizarin stretched out his hand, ready to pull Anran back at any time. Anran actually didn't understand how to treat it, but she still squatted down bravely and put her hand on Odea's rough arm. Odea took a sharp breath, and his whole body seemed to twitch. Anran opened her eyes wide, feeling a little unbelievable. How is it? Anran. Molin shouted, who was also behind Anran. It's terrible. Anran couldn't help but say. Are you okay? Molin asked anxiously. I'm fine. Anran shook her head, and a look of heartache appeared on her little face, but I can feel the pain in Odea's body. The pain seems to be flowing in his blood and bones, biting his blood vessels and bone marrow. This is a very powerful curse. That's the feeling. Fizarin said solemnly, then are you okay? All the centaurs looked at Anran nervously. Anran had touched the cursed arm of Odea, but she did not show any pain. This curse really could not be transmitted to Anran. All the centaurs lit up their eyes. But then they looked at Odea in confusion, because Odea was still twitching in pain at this time. Why doesn't it work? Ronan looked up at the stars. It should work. I don't know, I'm sorry. Anran was also very puzzled. I can feel this curse, but I don't know how to eliminate it. It flows through Odea and also passes to me. It is also on me, but it didn't hurt me. I have a feeling that I can lead this curse out, but I don't know where to lead it to. Anran looked around and saw a piece of bark on the ground that was kicked by Odea. She immediately grabbed the bark. But as soon as her hand touched the bark suddenly exploded and broke into powder. All the centaurs gasped, and even Maureen was surprised. No, the bark has no magic and can't offset this curse. It must be very powerful magic to offset this pain. And Rand shook his head. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Leave. Anran, leave. I can't stand it, I can't hurt you, leave. Odia screamed. He was about to lose control of his body, and shouted for Anran to leave. Back off. Anran. Seeing that Odia was about to lose control in pain, Fezarin was worried that Anran would be kicked by Odia's hoof, so he quickly grabbed Anran's shoulders and tried to pull Anran away. But the moment Fezarin's hand touched Anran, his face changed drastically, and then he let out a scream, lost his balance, and fell to the ground. Ah! It's over, you touched me, the pain seems to be transmitted to you through me. Anran exclaimed. Now all the centaurs changed their faces, because Anran did not heal Odia, but cursed Forenza. Both Fezarin and Odia twitched in pain on the ground. The situation was even more serious. How could it be? Did we misread the stars? Ronan looked up at the stars in the sky in disbelief. His face became very panicked, but he immediately shook his head. That's right, and Rand should be able to solve this curse, but why? Why? Ronan was walking around uneasily, and his eyes were full of doubt when he looked at Anran. Anran was a guest they invited, and they thought Anran could help them not be entangled by the curse, but no one expected that Anran would not only fail to remove the curse, but spread the curse. It should be clear that before this curse would only be passed from one centaur to another, and no matter what, only one centaur would suffer, but after Anran touched it, it was equivalent to letting two centaurs suffer the curse at the same time. This situation is already very serious. Anran's contact spread the curse. The eyes of all the centaurs looking at Anran have changed from eager expectations at the beginning to fear. Chapter 366, Conduction Curse. Could it be that the stars are really wrong? Chief. Garrett asked anxiously. The other centaurs also let out a low moan. Sometimes centaurs would misread the stars, but this was very rare, and the star trajectory seen by all the tribesmen was consistent, so it was unlikely to be wrong. They could not explain the situation in front of them. Could it be that Anran, she is not our welcome guest either? Tries, who was very happy to see Odia invite Anran just now, said in doubt. I don't know. Ronan, as the leader of the centaurs, did not dare to draw conclusions easily at this time. Things were different from what they saw in the stars. This was very strange. But Hagrid was already there shouting, Anran, get out of there. Hurry up. Fezarin and Odia were twitching on both sides of Anran. If they were not careful, with their two strong horse hooves, they would be able to kick Anran and hurt her. Anran seemed to realize this, and she stood up in a panic, but all around her were tree barks kicked off by Odia. She accidentally stepped on a large piece of bark, slipped, and fell backwards. At this time, Odia's slightly twitching horse hoof had already kicked towards Anran. Be careful. Maureen didn't have time to pull out his wand. When Odia kicked the horse hoof out, he grabbed Anran's hand without hesitation and pulled Anran over. The moment he grabbed Anran's arm, a strange magical force suddenly surged towards him. Maureen was startled. This magic was very powerful and strange, and he had never seen this kind of magic before. Not good. The other centaurs also exclaimed, and their faces became more panicked when they saw Maureen holding Anran. Because of a contact with Anran, Fezarin was cursed. If Maureen was touched, he might become the second Fezarin. But Maureen suddenly uttered a sigh. He was not hurt like Fezarin. On the contrary, the power disappeared inexplicably after touching his arm. Are you okay? Anran asked nervously after she stood firm. I'm fine. This curse seems to not work on me. Maureen said uncertainly. Anran was also surprised. Oh, you, my God. What a strange feeling. Maureen pulled Anran away from Odia and Fezarin and stepped aside. Hagrid had already run over and asked nervously, Are you okay? We're fine, Professor. Maureen said. You're not hurt? Hagrid asked cautiously. Maureen shook his head. The other centaurs also reacted, but no one dared to approach Fezarin and Odia. They just looked at Maureen with a look of doubt. Ronan came over and asked anxiously, What's going on? Why did you spread the curse to Fezarin, but he was fine? I don't know, Mr. Centaur. Anran said timidly. She didn't know how to address Ronan, so she just said it directly. She turned to Maureen and said, I don't know why, I feel as if the curse can't hurt you. The curse really has no effect on me. Maureen pondered for a moment and said, I'll try it. Anyway, I'm used to it. I'm often immune to this and that. An old man always said that I'm thick-skinned. Unran wanted to laugh after hearing Maureen's words, but she held back when she remembered the two suffering centaurs. Then be careful. Unran said. Don't go over there. Hagrid quickly grabbed Maureen and shook his head, saying, It's too dangerous. I can't take you to take risks. I'm afraid this matter is not something we can deal with. We'd better think of another way. Professor, I should be fine. Maureen said, and we are here to help them at night, so we have to try. But this is too rash. Hagrid was still very hesitant, but looking at the two neighing centaurs on the ground, he couldn't bear to watch it. Professor, maybe it will work. Maureen said. Okay, I'm really crazy. I hope it will work. But don't be stubborn. Tell me immediately if there is anything abnormal. Hagrid let go of Maureen's hand and warned him seriously. Period. All the centaurs also looked at Maureen nervously, and their eyes looked at Maureen more anxiously. Maureen carefully stretched out a finger and touched Fizarin's painful body, then immediately retracted it, but found that there seemed to be no problem. He stretched out his finger again, and then his eyes flickered slightly in surprise. Hey, that curse can't hurt me either. Maureen poked Fizarin's shoulder with his finger again, and then said, It's so strange, the curse saw me and ran to other parts of his body. When I touched you just now, Maureen stopped talking here. He was thinking about something. What's wrong? Are you okay? Ronan asked worriedly. Oh, I'm fine. Maureen waved at Unran and said, Unran, come here, maybe I can help them. How to help? Unran asked impatiently. I can't guide this curse out of them, but you can. Maybe you can try to transfer the curse to me. Maureen said. Is this okay? Will you be okay? Unran asked nervously. It should be. I didn't get hurt just now, right? Maureen spread his hands. If Maureen were to touch the curse magic directly, the curse would avoid Maureen, but Unran seemed to be able to control the curse and spread it to other places, such as Fuzzlin, or a piece of bark, but the bark couldn't bear it. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Unran hesitated for a moment, nodded and said, Okay. Let's try it. The two of them walked back to Fuzzlin, whose twitching amplitude was relatively not that large. Unran held Maureen's hand, and then put the other hand on Fuzzlin. Every centaur's heart was in their throat. If this method didn't work, then they were afraid that one of them would be entangled by this curse every day and would never be at peace. Every centaur was praying in secret. When Unran's hand touched Fezzarin's arm, the curse was controlled by Unran and flowed through her body. She tried to guide the curse to Maureen. After the curse that could bring heart-wrenching pain to Odia and Fezzarin was guided to Maureen, it disappeared again like ice and snow melting. Huh? Maureen, you are so powerful. Unran couldn't help but say. Yes, I have thick skin and can take a beating. Maureen pouted his lips. Arnok liked to say this about him before. Fezzarin suddenly exhaled a big breath. When the curse was guided to Maureen by Unran, his body stopped twitching, the pain on his face gradually subsided, and then he slowly opened his eyes. I'm fine. Fezzarin shook his body and barely stood up. It worked. Ronan smiled with relief. Many centaurs were also very surprised. Unran and Maureen walked to Odia again hand in hand, and grabbed Odia's arm from a safe angle. After a moment, Odia exhaled suddenly, and the curse on him dissipated. He slowly stopped twitching, and stood up weakly with heavy breathing. The stars are right. Unran is indeed the key to the continuation of our race. Ronan said in a low voice. All the centaurs breathed a sigh of relief, and some of them hugged each other. Thank you for relieving my pain, Miss Unran. Odia came over and bowed solemnly. Unran said shyly, You should thank Maureen. I put the curse in his body. Without him, I can't help you. Odia turned his head and looked at Maureen. There was still some uneasiness in his eyes, but he forced a smile. Thank you, invisible guest. Maureen touched his nose and said, You're welcome. You saved us in the Forbidden Forest. If Odia and Dashin hadn't come over at that time, no one knew what the smoke monster would do to them. Chapter 367, The Black Cube at Dusk. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that to you. Odia recalled his attitude at that time and felt ashamed. At that time, he wanted to drive Maureen out of the Forbidden Forest. Yes, we didn't know who you were at that time. Ronan walked over and said, Even now we can't see you, but we centaurs want to protect our territory. We will see any impending danger through the stars. Your appearance makes us unable to see through, which makes everyone panic. All the centaurs whined softly. The sound was a little doubtful, but then it fell silent. If we can't see a person, we can't confirm whether he is a good person or a bad person, let alone take the most correct protection measures, so we can only drive you out. Ronan looked at Maureen and said. Maureen curled his lips. I'm really unwelcome. No wonder Odia wanted him to leave the Forbidden Forest as soon as possible that day. They centaurs are really direct in doing things. I'm sorry, you helped us. We can be sure that you are a trustworthy person who will not bring danger to the Forbidden Forest. We feel guilty for our actions. Odia also bowed to Maureen. I'm not used to being welcomed again all of a sudden. Maureen touched the back of his head. He had been facing the unfriendly eyes of the centaurs all the way here. If he didn't know that the centaurs would not hurt the foals under any circumstances, he would not be so calm. Maureen thought carefully for a moment, and then asked, then why did you invite me to? You can't know in advance that I can help you. I asked Odia to invite you. We just wanted to confirm what kind of person you are. Fizarin came over, looked at Maureen, and then looked at Enran, and then explained, sometimes we can see Enran, and sometimes we can't see Enran, which puzzled us. Then I found the records about invisible people in the records left on the stone tablet of the tribe, so I think it is necessary to find out whether you are the so-called invisible person. Maureen suddenly realized that Enran was probably with him often, so Enran could not be predicted sometimes. You must know that he is a person who can even cover up the traces of the Ministry of Magic. Sweet didn't receive any warning letters when he performed magic outside the school last time, which was probably related to him. Then this kerosene lamp. Maureen took out the small, bright golden lamp from his pocket, which Odia had just lent him for lighting. It is written on the stone tablet that if an invisible person approaches the black cube of dusk, he will get lost in the dark. Fazelin said. What does this mean? Maureen asked puzzled. Fazelin looked at Maureen strangely. We don't know, but haven't you ever been lost? The black cube of dusk, lost in the dark? Maureen recalled and nodded thoughtfully. You are right to say that. I have indeed been lost several times. Huh? Maureen, have you been lost several times? Enran asked curiously, are you a person with a poor sense of direction? No, it's just under certain special circumstances. Do you remember the time when we got lost in the woods last summer vacation? That's what I mean. I will explain it to you in detail later. Maureen said. After a while, he asked again, what is this golden kerosene lamp for? This is the fire of our centaurs. It is the flame picked from the bonfire of life. We live in the Forbidden Forest. This flame can help us find our way back in the woods. Ronan said beside him. He pointed to the bonfire behind him, and Maureen realized that the color of the bonfire in the open space of the Forbidden Forest was the same as the color of the flame in his hand, both flashing a pleasant golden color. What is the fire? Enran asked. It is related to the continuation of our centaurs. Each of our centaurs will guard a bonfire. If the bonfire goes out, it means that our tribe will also be destroyed. Ronan said in a deep voice. Every centaur suddenly showed a very serious expression. The strong tribesmen have to go out every day to find some special herbs to keep this bonfire burning. This bonfire has very powerful magic. Rain, wind and snow will not extinguish it. We rely not only on planetary predictions, but also on the smoke formed by burning different herbs in the bonfire to see good and bad luck and avoid disasters. Ronan explained solemnly. So that's how it is. Maureen nodded in sudden realization. It was the first time he had heard that the centaurs had to guard a bonfire. They have a special person guarding this bonfire every day, and they guard this bonfire at night to learn all kinds of knowledge. Hagrid whispered beside him. He had known about the centaurs' bonfire for a long time. Maureen held the kerosene lamp in his hand. This special flame was considered the magic of the centaurs. It was very important to the centaurs. He had seen it before, because when he held this lamp, the ominous feeling he had at dusk would disappear. Maureen continued to ask, what did you just say, the black magic cube of dusk? Ronan and Fizarin looked at each other, and the other centaurs began to dig their hooves again anxiously. You have seen the black magic cube? Fizarin whispered. I've seen it. Maureen thought of the smoke man and said in surprise, you mean the black smoke that took and ran away that day? That's a dirty thing. Ronan said seriously, it should have been imprisoned in the black cube. Maureen suddenly realized something and said, wait, what you mean by imprisoned in the black cube, doesn't it mean? Have you also seen a black box, like this? Maureen took out his wand, pointed at a branch, and turned the branch into a black box he got from Zimmerman last time. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. When Maureen turned the branch into this black box, many centaurs suddenly cried out in anxiety, and Ronan and Fizarin also changed their faces instantly. You have seen this box? Where is it? Ronan asked in panic. Is this box important? Maureen asked. Ronan and Fizarin had uncertain expressions on their faces. Ronan looked up at the stars, and then whispered, Neptune has dimmed by 5 degrees. Many centaurs also looked up at the sky, and their eyes were all shining with complex lights. What does Neptune dimming by 5 degrees mean? Anrin asked in confusion. It must be another inexplicable prophecy. Hagrid muttered, when they don't want to tell the secret, they will talk about these incomprehensible star languages. He walked back to the big rock next to the campfire and sat down, then waved to Maureen and Anrin and said, It's warm here, come here and warm yourself by the fire. The centaurs did not stop him. They trusted Hagrid and could let Hagrid get close to the campfire of life, because Hagrid knew the importance of this campfire and would not destroy it at will. Maureen and Anrin also walked over and sat around the campfire. This time, the centaurs did not show any unkind eyes to Maureen. The golden campfire was jumping happily, dispelling the chill brought by the snowy night. Fizarin also came over, his eyes fixed on the flickering campfire, and said, Ronan, the mistake has already been made, we should not run away. Then he raised his head and stared at the stars in the sky. After a long time, he said quietly, otherwise Uranus will continue to dim. Maureen, Anrin and the others all looked confused. Chapter 368, The Centaur's Failure. I will study astronomy well when I go back. And Ran whispered to Maureen, otherwise I won't understand what they are saying. Then tell me if you understand. Maureen said helplessly. He was Professor Sinister's least favorite student. He was the focus of criticism in every class. Astronomy was the most tormenting. It was really a headache to have the professor say that you were wrong when you saw the planets correctly. He added, I am a salted fish that can't turn over in astronomy. The two smiled at each other. Ronan was silent for a long time, and finally said in his sad and low voice, in August, we made a serious mistake. Maureen quickly put away his smile and listened carefully. He vaguely felt that this matter was not simple. To be honest, he knew almost nothing about the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. Our tribe has been guarding the Black Cube in the Forbidden Forest for generations. Ronan's sad tone made the atmosphere particularly solemn. All the centaurs stopped talking. They seemed to be guilty of some of their own mistakes. According to the warning passed down from generation to generation in our tribe, the Black Cube must be guarded, otherwise the curse will come at a certain moment and the bonfire will go out. We all kept in mind the teachings of our ancestors and guarded the Black Cube diligently, but at the end of August, an accident happened. Ronan's voice was mixed with guilt and regret, and a little anger. A wizard who did not belong to the Forbidden Forest broke in. He used very powerful means to hide from all our tribesmen, stole the heavily guarded Black Cube, and released the dirty things trapped in the Black Cube. Ronan glanced at it and ran slowly, and then continued, so the Forbidden Forest has become no longer peaceful since then. Maureen was slightly surprised. If the black box was the Black Cube mentioned by the horseman, wouldn't it mean that the wizard who stole the Black Cube was Lucas? He suddenly realized that it was no wonder that Sweep couldn't find Lucas's whereabouts with his special magic. He originally thought that Lucas would come to the Forbidden Forest after the Dumbledore Cup ended, and he specially asked Sweep to help keep an eye on it, but now it seems that Lucas had been here during the summer vacation. The ancestral teachings told us to guard the Black Cube no matter what, but when it was passed down to our generation, the Black Cube was stolen, and the things in the Black Cube ran out and made trouble everywhere in the Forbidden Forest. We have been trying to catch the dirty thing in the Forbidden Forest, but without the Black Cube, we can't stop it. Ronan shook his head. The other centaurs were also very disappointed. It has always been their responsibility to protect the peace of the Forbidden Forest, but because of themselves, the Forbidden Forest has been in a dangerous state for the past few months. This situation is not allowed to happen. No wonder we always hear explosions. You should tell me the truth, Ronan. Hagrid muttered. This is our responsibility. We should bear it ourselves. Ronan said seriously. You took it upon yourself? Have you settled it now? Not only that, but you are also cursed, right? Hagrid picked up a branch from the ground and threw it into the bonfire with dissatisfaction. The bonfire made a crackling sound, and then Hagrid asked again, by the way, where did this curse come from? Ronan showed a trace of fear in his eyes. It is a very powerful divination curse left in the ancestral teachings. Once the situation becomes more serious due to our negligence, the divination curse will punish us every night when Venus enters the orbit. The centaurs who had been punished whimpered, and even the centaurs with strong personalities could not endure this heart-wrenching curse. Oh, no wonder. Maureen said in surprise. No wonder what? All the centaurs turned their heads to look at Maureen. Maureen touched his head in embarrassment and smiled innocently. I now understand why the curse doesn't work on me. Why? Ronan, Fizzarin and others looked at Maureen. The curse frightened the centaurs in the entire Forbidden Forest. Even Hagrid could not avoid it. In addition to Unran who had special abilities, there was only Maureen. Unran directed the divination curse to Maureen, but Maureen was still alive and kicking, which made them feel that Maureen was a very mysterious person. Because, let me think, Maureen also looked up at the stars in the sky in a serious manner, touched his chin and said nonsense, because the Orion Betelgeuse is very bright at night. Centaurs always like to talk about this star is very bright, that star is very dark, so Maureen also deliberately made up a nonsense. The centaurs suddenly looked serious, raised their heads in unison, looked to the west, and the atmosphere became quiet again. What are you doing? Maureen felt that something was wrong. We can't see the Betelgeuse you mentioned. Ronan said seriously. Are you looking for Betelgeuse? Maureen almost laughed out loud. He just wanted to play a prank and not explain it clearly, so that the centaurs could also experience the feeling of choking people with inexplicable words. As a result, these centaurs actually took his words seriously. Okay, don't look at it. I don't know where Orion Betelgeuse is. Maureen held back his laughter. He was a mess in astronomy and had given up long ago. Who would know which star was Betelgeuse? Then why are you not affected by the divination curse? Ronan asked in confusion. This is also what the other centaurs have always wanted to know. Because you always choose to be blind to me. Maureen said unhappily. Every time he stood in front of the centaurs would say that they were lying with their eyes open, staring at him for a long time with their big eyes, and then said seriously I can't see you, which made Maureen feel very confused. What does that mean? Fezzerin also asked seriously. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. You can't see me, so the curse can't see me either, that's probably what it means. Maureen said perfunctorily. No divination magic can work on him. Madame Rhea, Professor Victor, Magatha and the mysterious old witch have all suffered from Maureen, and the centaurs are obviously no exception. The divination curse that can make the centaurs terrified is simply a decoration for Maureen. But Maureen didn't want to explain. The centaurs always looked like they wanted to say something to them, and he didn't want to say too much. Fizzarin and Ronan nodded thoughtfully, as if they continued to think about what Maureen meant. By the way, when did you start to be punished by this divination curse? Maureen asked. From the day the black magic cube was lost. Ronan said in a deep voice. So you have been punished for several months. Hagrid looked shocked. I always thought you started a month ago. We just let you find Fizzarin who was punished by the divination curse last month. This is our own fault and has nothing to do with you, Hagrid. Ronan said suppressedly. Isn't this curse left by your ancestors too redundant? It's not intentional, why punish like this? Hagrid muttered. You don't understand, Hagrid. Ronan said solemnly, the meaning of our tribe's existence in the Forbidden Forest is to protect this black cube. Once the black cube is lost, there is no need for us to continue to exist. So strict. Hagrid couldn't understand the centaur's mysterious statement. Not to mention Hagrid, even Maureen and Anrin couldn't understand it. The mission should be strict. The punishment is to remind us to find the black cube as soon as possible, otherwise Ronan said here, and suddenly raised his head to look at the stars in the sky, and his expression became very flustered. Arcturus began to shine. Fizzarin continued. The centaurs once again began to growl in anxiety. Maureen rolled his eyes. The way the centaurs spoke was really annoying. Chapter 369 The Source of the Divination Curse. All right. Whatever Arcturus pentagram wants to shine, let it shine. Hagrid didn't want to ask what it meant, because it was useless to ask. He stretched out his big hand and patted and ran. So when did you find and ran? After the thing in the black cube took and ran away that day, we suddenly realized it, but Odia didn't know it at that time. He drove and ran and Maureen out of the Forbidden Forest. Ronan said. Odia lowered his head. He had been wandering around the edge of the Forbidden Forest recently, just to find an opportunity to invite and ran, but because they accidentally hurt the students last time, Hagrid didn't allow them to get close to the students. We looked at the stars and found that Ran could help us fight this curse. Ronan said faintly, the punishment is to warn us to find the black cube quickly, but this punishment also makes our entire tribe weak. If this continues, we will have even less energy to subdue the things in the Forbidden Forest, so we can only seek Ran's help. Wouldn't it be better if you told me the secret earlier? You always evade and hide it from me. Hagrid said, if you had made things clear earlier, I would have found Ran earlier. We didn't want to involve you, Hagrid. Fizerin shook his head. Then is the divination curse lifted now? And Ran asked. We don't know. The divination curse occurs every day. Ronan became uneasy again. Every night, a tribe member will be punished, and the punishment will stop in about an hour. We can't be sure whether the curse is lifted now. But where did this divination curse come from? Maureen looked around and found that many centaurs were gathering around the bonfire. He turned back and looked at the bonfire in front of him. The golden flames kept jumping, as if bringing hope to people. Smoke was curling around the bonfire, forming various shapes. The centaurs would use the smoke from burning different plants to tell fortunes. This bonfire must be their most important tool for divination. Maureen asked in confusion, could this bonfire be the source of the divination curse? He really couldn't think of any curse that could last so long. Magic also needs to rely on something to exist, and it can't be illusory. The centaur's bonfire has been burning since their tribe lived in the Forbidden Forest. It is estimated that it has a long history. If there is any divination curse that will fall on the centaurs, it is only this immortal bonfire. Ronan and Fizerin seemed not to hear Maureen's words. They just looked at the flame. The flame reflected in their eyes was obviously so sacred. Maureen realized something. You knew it a long time ago, didn't you? Maureen said in surprise. The centaurs are so familiar with divination, and this punishment is a curse from divination. They can't be unaware of this. This is the fire that continues our race, which is more important than the lives of all of us. Ronan said softly. All the centaurs neighed slightly, and no one showed dissatisfaction with the bonfire, even though they all knew that the divination curse came from the bonfire. Respect for the bonfire has been deeply rooted in every centaur. They have been taught since childhood that it is something that needs to be protected with life. What a stubborn mind. Maureen muttered. You centaurs are usually on high alert and know divination magic. If someone comes to steal from you, you should know in advance, right? Hagrid picked up another branch and threw it into the bonfire. He took off his gloves and warmed his hands on the bonfire. Fizerin said in a deep voice, we have been deceived. Then you should have seen who this wizard is. Hagrid put his face close to the bonfire again, so that his shaggy beard with ice chips could also be warmed. He also protected his beard with his hands to prevent it from catching fire. Hagrid said again, if you have seen it, we can ask others and maybe we can find it out. Ronan said in a low voice, we don't know. He has powerful abilities. We haven't even seen what he looks like. Now he is shrouded in a layer of fog. Although he is not completely non-existent like Maureen, he can't get rid of the fog. Ronan glanced at Maureen. In their eyes, Maureen was as transparent as a witch. Old witch. Maureen suddenly said. What? Hagrid and others turned their heads to look at Maureen. Maureen rummaged through his pockets for a while. He originally wanted to find a wanted photo of Lucas, but found that he didn't bring it with him. I know who the person who stole the black cube is. His name is Lucas. You centaurs can't predict Lucas's whereabouts because he has a very powerful arithmetic fortune teller as his helper. Arithmetic fortune teller. Ronan frowned. Although he tried his best to conceal it, Maureen still heard a hint of arrogance and contempt in his tone. I don't remember any arithmetic fortune teller among wizards who can hide the truth. That just shows how powerful she is. There are many powerful fortune teller among wizards. Maureen thought of Lady Rhea first, but then thought of Professor Victor, Magatha and the Old Witch, and added, an arithmetic fortune teller. If you centaurs didn't see these wizards, it means their divination skills are powerful enough to keep you invisible. I've only seen a few. Many centaurs moved slightly on the spot. They were very confident in their divination magic and seemed to disagree with Maureen's words, but out of politeness, they did not express it obviously this time. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. If you mean Trelawney from Hogwarts, Ronan's voice was a little doubtful. Oh, I'm not talking about her. Maureen shook his head. In fact, she is also very powerful. Although I heard that most of her predictions are inaccurate, The ones that are accurate are all big predictions, but I'm not referring to her. There are more reliable fortune tellers and arithmetic fortune tellers than her, such as the old witch I met at the Muggle Opera House last time. She is good enough to deceive your eyes. Maureen had naturally seen the old witch's arithmetic divination magic. Although it didn't work on him, it was different for others. With her help, the guidance of Payangd and a mess of black magic items, Lucas was like a fish in water. It was not a big deal to steal the black magic cube from the heavily guarded centaurs who could predict the future. Ronan, you should admit that there are indeed people whose divination magic is not weaker than ours. Fezarin said, although we have seen many secrets, it does not mean that we are the only ones who know the secrets. Ronan's eyes flickered twice, and he decided not to continue arguing on this topic. He asked, then you have seen this person, right? You said you have his photo just now. Yes, if you want to know what this person looks like, I can bring his photo to you tomorrow or some other time. Please bring the photo. Ronan said solemnly, and his eyes fell on the campfire. We only saw a shadow covered by the fog, but if there are specific photos, we can use the fire to find his whereabouts. Your campfire. Maureen was a little skeptical. The fire has been burning for so many years, and the divination magic accumulated is far beyond your imagination. Ronan said. Chapter 370, Hospitable Hagrid. By the way, what is the monster trapped in the black cube? How can it have such great destructive power? Maureen asked curiously. Ronan raised his head again, looked at the stars in the sky, his eyes flickered twice, and shook his head. If you want to retrieve the black cube, you should explain this matter to us clearly. Maureen said. We will handle it ourselves. As long as we retrieve the black cube, it will not be a problem to subdue the monster. Ronan said. Hagrid looked at the night sky and interrupted them. Okay, it's getting late. We should go back. Oh, hell. Hagrid didn't notice that his beard was ignited by the bonfire. He quickly patted his beard and put out the fire. The charred smoke from the burning beard gradually floated over the bonfire, forming a vague image of Hagrid. Maureen and Anron both found it very interesting. This bonfire did not look simple. Molin, to ensure that you don't get lost in the dark, you will always carry the flame I gave you. Fazellen said, although we don't know why divination magic is ineffective on you, our fire is not just as simple as settling divination magic, it has other special uses. Maureen looked at the small kerosene lamp in his hand and nodded. I know. The fire of the centaurs has never been extinguished, and this alone is enough to be respected. When he came to the Forbidden Forest just now, he also relied on this kerosene lamp to dispel the familiar sense of danger. This flame should not go out, right? Maureen asked again. You can give it some leaves you like every day, whether it is dead leaves or green leaves, it doesn't matter, to keep it burning. It is separated from the fire, and it is different from the fire, it will go out, you have to understand this. Fazellen reminded. I understand. Maureen breathed a sigh of relief. He thought he had to find something special to burn. If you just use leaves to make it burn, it's not a difficult task. Next time you go to the herbology class to help prune the branches and leaves of plants, just take back all the cut leaves. Then let's go. If Anron can help you, I'll bring her to see you tomorrow. I shouldn't have this idea. Sorry, Anron. Maureen, I have to get your consent first. Hagrid rubbed his hands and put on his gloves again. It's okay, Professor, I'm happy to help. Madame Pomfrey taught me healing magic to help others. Anron blinked and said. As for Maureen, he naturally had no objection. Anyway, he was used to being restless, and it was nice to run out occasionally. Odia will take you away. There are dangerous things in the Forbidden Forest. Ronan said. Yes. Odia walked out with a solemn face and responded, I won't let you be threatened by that monster, I can guarantee this. The pain he experienced at night was solved by Anron and Maureen together. Although he still felt a little strange about not being able to see Maureen, he finally felt less anxious. They got back on the sled. Maureen knocked on the sled, and the 5 centaurs immediately escorted them out of the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid followed behind them at a trot. The road in the Forbidden Forest was difficult to walk on, and because of the snow, it was very wet, and it was impossible to tell where the road was. However, the centaurs grew up in this Forbidden Forest, and they were very familiar with the Forbidden Forest. Many of them took Maureen and the others to Hagrid's hut. Tomorrow evening, I will wait for you here. Odia bowed slightly to Maureen and Anron, then turned and ran towards the Forbidden Forest, and soon disappeared in the Forbidden Forest. I will talk to the principal about this tomorrow. No matter what, The principal must know about this. Hagrid looked in the direction of the castle. The castle was brightly lit and there were still some students lingering at the door. He muttered, "It's too late to go to the auditorium to eat now. You must be hungry. How about this?" Hagrid showed a very enthusiastic smile. "I will cook for you myself. I have researched a new recipe for boiled hot and sour food." Are you serious?" Maureen was startled. "Professor, actually, we are not hungry, really, don't be polite with me. You helped a lot in the evening. It's my duty to cook for you. Let's go." Hagrid happily pushed Maureen and Anrin towards his cabin. "Thank you, Professor Hagrid." Anrin was also very happy. She looked naive and wanted to try Hagrid's cooking skills. Maureen wanted to remind Anrin again and again that Hagrid's cooking skills were catastrophic, but there was no chance, and she couldn't find an excuse not to eat, otherwise it would be tantamount to not giving the professor face. He felt that Anrin would not be able to smile later. Anrin was indeed happy to enter Hagrid's hut, and came out with a bitter face. She was scared by the dragon meat cooked by Hagrid. The dragon meat was not cooked well at all, and there was blood when it was served. In addition to the seasoning that Hagrid added at will, by the end of the meal, both Maureen and Anrin were almost scared to tears. "Are you really not going to take some back? This dragon meat is very expensive. It was given to me by Charlie. He raises dragons. In fact, I don't agree with eating dragons, but now the dragon industry has been formed, and I can't say anything." "You may not have heard of Charlie?" Hagrid ate very satisfied and said, "But you can't eat dragon meat in the school auditorium. You can take some for others to taste. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar." "No, Professor. Really no." Anrin said with fear on her face. "Yes, such precious dragon meat, we are a little embarrassed." Maureen also nodded desperately. This hell-on-earth fire made a horrible seasoning of hot and sour dragon meat soup really scared them, but they were too embarrassed to tell Hagrid directly how bad his cooking skills were. Especially when Maureen said it tastes good against his will, Hagrid scooped him a big spoonful more enthusiastically, and Maureen wanted to slap himself. "What's there to be embarrassed about? Come. I'll get you a rice bag as a thank you for helping the centaurs." Hagrid put all the remaining dragon meat soup into a specially packed magic rice bag and put it on the table. "Professor, it's really not necessary, don't waste it. Although dragons are cute, their meat has high nutritional value. Enjoy it." Hagrid generously stuffed 2 rice bags into Maureen and Anrin's arms respectively. Maureen and Anrin held the heavy rice bags and tried to hide their horrified expressions. Hagrid sent them to the castle and then left. Maureen and Anrin were left staring at each other. "What should we do? This is precious dragon meat. Throwing it away directly is not good. What should we do?" Anrin said miserably. Maureen said with a heavy face, "It doesn't matter. We still have Hugo." Chapter 371 Arcturian Divination. Hugo never refused food. After eating Hagrid's dragon meat, he chased Maureen around the dormitory with tears in his eyes all night. "What are you doing, Hugo?" When Maureen climbed onto the bed, he found Hugo sitting on the bed, wiping his tears while reading a book. He was quite curious. Hugo never reads in bed. It was not his habit. Mars has not yet reached the octave orbit. Hugo's tears were choked by the dragon meat. He wiped his tears with a tissue and showed Maureen the cover of the book. It was a book called Astronomy. There were several rotating planets on the cover. The brightness of the planets kept flashing a few times, emitting various colors of light. "What Odia said." Maureen remembered what Odia said to Hugo before he took them to the Forbidden Forest. He asked curiously, "Why are you so interested in this thing all of a sudden? I heard that the centaur's divination is very accurate." Hugo turned a page and continued, "What if he is warning me when the disaster will come? I have to be prepared." "Then have you found out anything?" Maureen did not refute Hugo's words. Although the centaur's weird look is annoying, they are really good at divination. Odia may really know something. "I can't find out." "Have you heard of what the octave orbit means?" Hugo said a little depressed. "Don't ask me." Maureen spread his hands. "My astronomy is a mess, even worse than you." "Yes, this is your only shortcoming." Hugo yawned. "It's the only second." Maureen corrected, "Did you forget that there is Muggle research? I will ask Professor Sinistra next week to see if she knows what the octave orbit of Mars means." Hugo closed the book and threw it on the bedside table. "Then you'd better not mention that this is what the centaurs said. Professor Sinistra will be unhappy." Maureen reminded. Professor Sinistra once said that wizards' research on astronomy is far better than that of centaurs, but centaurs themselves think that wizards' divination is just child's play, so it's better not to argue about this matter. Hugo covered himself with a quilt and wrapped himself tightly, leaving only his head exposed. He glanced at the dormitory. Sweden Toby had not returned yet. He asked excitedly, "By the way, did anything happen at night? Did the centaurs do anything to you?" "Some accidents happened to the centaurs." Maureen told all the things that happened at night. After listening, Hugo was shocked. They should have put out the bonfire that brought the curse. Hugo couldn't help saying, "That would be equivalent to taking their lives." Maureen said. Hugo suddenly frowned, as if he thought of something. "What's wrong?" Maureen asked curiously. "You just said that they mentioned the problem of the shining of Arcturus." Hugo asked puzzledly. "Yes, every time they have a secret they don't want to tell, they will mention a star to prevaricate." "What's wrong with this star?" Maureen had no idea what Arcturus was. Hugo got up from the bed again, pulled the astronomy book on the bedside table, flipped through a few pages, and said, "I seem to have heard about Arcturus shining somewhere just now. Yes, here." Hugo pointed his finger at the content in the book and read it out. "Arcturus, the guardian god in divination astrology, is an extremely bright zero-magnitude star in the sky. When it flickers irregularly, it indicates that the good or bad luck of the thing being thought about will change. Things in your mind." Maureen leaned over to look at the book in Hugo's hand. Hugo moved the book a little closer to Maureen, and Maureen saw some introductions on how to determine good or bad luck based on the brightness of Arcturus. In the eyes of wizards, the brightness of stars is biased, that is, different wizards see different brightness of stars, which is related to magic. If you want to know whether the things you think about will turn out good or bad, you have to imagine the consequences of the matter, and then observe the brightness of Arcturus. According to the number of flashes and the increase or decrease in brightness, you can determine the level of good or bad luck of the matter. The book also marks the brightness reference and the prediction of good or bad luck based on the flashing frequency. When you don't think about anything, the brightness of the stars you see is fixed. When you focus on imagining something, the brightness of Arcturus in your eyes will begin to change. The degree of good or bad luck is divided according to the brightness. When the brightness remains unchanged, it is the most auspicious. When the brightness begins to decrease, the more obvious the flashing frequency is, the higher the degree of danger is. I'll try it. Hugo took out a folding telescope from the box, walked to the window, adjusted the telescope, and looked at the sky. "Oh, this telescope can't turn. The star should be on the other side of the castle and can be seen from the window on the other side of the stairs. Do you want to try it?" "Maureen, maybe we can guess what the centaurs are most worried about. Did they lose the box?" "You just need to focus on the loss of the box to know how serious the consequences of losing the box are," Hugo said excitedly. "It's useless for me to look at the stars," Maureen reminded. "Then I'll think for you. Let's go." The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Hugo put on a coat. Although it was snowing outside, the temperature in the castle was relatively high. The two of them could keep warm in a thin coat. The two took the telescope, left the boys' dormitory, ran along the corridor, and ran to the stairs leading to the common room, and set up the telescope. "Let me see, Arcturus. Arcturus. I see it. Let me try to predict. The brightness of Arcturus is." Hugo looked at the telescope and referred to the textbook, and then said happily, "It is the brightness of a zero-magnitude star, and it is not flickering at the moment, which is great. It means that things are not that bad." "Are you talking about the centaurs losing the black cube?" "No, I was just thinking about whether there will be peach honey sandwiches for breakfast tomorrow. According to the stars, the house elves will definitely prepare this tomorrow morning, so I don't have to worry about it," Hugo said with a smile. "Oh, that's what you're thinking about." Maureen couldn't help laughing. "I was right to give you the dragon meat cooked by Hagrid. Come on. Let me practice first and make some random predictions about the good and bad luck of things, such as whether I will have to redo the potion class next week. Last time, I boiled the white expander into black, and the effect should be about the same." Hugo moved the telescope, looked at the brightness table again, and said with an uneasy look, "It's over. The brightness of Arcturus is flickering between magnitude 0 and 1. Positive flickering is a bad omen, which means that the matter of the potion class is a little bit uncertain." "Just a little bit uncertain?" "Hugo, there is no need to rely on Arcturus for divination for such things, right?" Maureen muttered. In astronomy, the brightness of magnitude 0 is a dividing line, which can be seen without a telescope. Brighter than magnitude 0 is represented by negative numbers, and darker than magnitude 0 is represented by positive numbers. Magnitude 6 is the darkest, and the brightness is invisible to the naked eye. Then I'll calculate some happy things, such as whether I will have enough breakfast tomorrow. Hugo compared them happily and said, "Great, the brightness of Arcturus is flickering between 0 and -0.3 magnitudes, and it flickers in a negative direction, which is a good sign, indicating that the things I am thinking about will develop in a good direction." He also predicted some things based on Arcturus, such as how will I sleep at night. Arcturus flickered between 0 and -0.4 magnitudes, indicating that the quality of sleep is first-rate. Another example is Professor Theodore's attitude towards him in the potions class next week. Arcturus flickered between 0 and 0.4 magnitudes, which seems to be a bit bad, and he will inevitably be criticized. It's time to calculate the business. Maureen yawned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372: A Sign of Great Disaster. Hugo found that it was not difficult to predict good or bad luck by looking at Arcturus, which suddenly gave him confidence in astronomy. He read the notes in the book. If you want to predict what others are worried about, you need to be very familiar with the things that others know. The more you know, the more accurate the prediction of the stars will be. Maureen had just talked about the centaurs in general, but in fact it was not very detailed, because they knew too little about the black magic cube, and the centaurs were unwilling to say too much. We only know that the centaurs were deceived by Lucas and the old witch, and then lost the black magic cube. Then we predict what will happen if the centaurs lose the black magic cube. I guess the prediction is not accurate. Hugo fiddled with the telescope for a while, and suddenly took a breath of cold air after a while. What's wrong? Maureen asked in confusion. From a 0 magnitude star to a 7 magnitude star. It flashed 7 brightnesses in the positive direction. Hugo was surprised. 7 magnitude star. Maureen looked at the notes in the astronomy book and found that 0 magnitude stars were the brightest, and 7 magnitude stars were very dim stars. They could not be distinguished by the eyes, and could only be identified with a magic telescope. Hugo just tested those strange things, and the leap did not exceed 1, but when he casually tested the black cube, it suddenly jumped to 7. This darkness jump is too big. In my eyes, Arcturus keeps flashing between the brightness of 0 and 7 stars. And I just thought about what would happen if the black cube was lost. Hugo confirmed it again, and then said in a somewhat incredible way, "This means that losing the black cube is a very, very dangerous thing. When you think about something, the greater the leap of Arcturus you see, the greater the impact of this thing will be. If it crosses 5 brightness, this thing can affect the Wizarding Society, and if it crosses 7 brightness." Maureen read the annotations in the book. The book did not say how serious it was to cross 7 brightness. It only gave an example, mentioning that on the day Dumbledore died, someone made a simple divination about the wizard's future fate. In the flickering changes of Arcturus, the consequences of Dumbledore's death, the brightness of Arcturus exceeded +7. Positive flashing is a bad omen. After Dumbledore's death, Voldemort began to rise recklessly and took control of the Wizarding Society. No one will forget that dark age. This example is too representative. Will what the planet sees happen? Hugo asked worriedly. Maureen looked at the words in the book and said, maybe, maybe not. After all, it is just a subjective judgment of the observer, which has a lot to do with your thoughts. If you don't think carefully enough or have only a superficial understanding of the matter, the predicted results may be biased. There is also a very eye-catching note in the book: the good or bad of things is not fixed, because if the observer intervenes in the matter artificially, it can reverse the divination results, so the prediction of Arcturus can only be used as a reference and cannot be regarded as the final conclusion. Hugo leaned his hand on the windowsill and said puzzledly, "But I can get this conclusion without thinking so carefully." If I think more carefully, wouldn't it be anyway? At least we know how dangerous the black cube is in Lucas' hands. Maureen thought thoughtfully. Although he didn't understand what Lucas was going to do, there was no doubt that the black cube was a very important magic item. Since the divination of Arcturus can only be used as a reference, it means that as long as Lucas is stopped, The divination result of Arcturus should be changed. Hugo continued to read the contents of the book. He said, predicting good or bad luck based on the observation of Arcturus is not a very profound astronomical knowledge. It can only simply predict a general sign of good or bad luck. What specific details will happen requires further prediction with the help of other celestial bodies. Let me see. If you want to predict the deeper direction of this matter, you need more complex celestial body calculations. Hugo was eager to calculate the angle between the line connecting Sirius and Canopus and Pluto to calculate what specific problems would be caused by the loss of the black magic cube. But he calculated for a long time and got a result that the iron tree bloomed a gorgeous sunflower, and then he realized that he had confused Neptune and Pluto. Finally, he looked at the direction of the window and found that Canopus could not be seen at all in this place. God knows which star he just mistook for Canopus. Hugo was also confused about astronomy, and as for Maureen, who was despised by the stars in the sky, there was even less hope. Astronomy is so complicated. I just thought I could master it perfectly. Hugo said regretfully, maybe my prediction about the black cube just now was also wrong. It's not ruled out. Anyway, I'd better ask the centaurs tomorrow. I must let them tell me something. What if what you saw is correct? Maureen said. What he wanted to know most was what the black cube could be used for. The centaurs were punished by their fire for losing the black cube, which showed that they knew the function of the black cube very well, but they were unwilling to say too much. If Maureen knew this, combined with the previous encounters with Lucas, he could try to think about what Lucas's next move would be. The next morning, Hugo got a good sleep as he wished, and the house elf also made the peach honey sandwich that he liked to eat recently, which made him feel very good. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. I didn't learn nothing last night. Think about it. I will at least know how to predict the good and bad luck of things in the future, as long as I don't predict complicated big things. Hugo held his cheek, drank a mouthful of thick soup leisurely, and then said, let's go to the library today. I want to find out what it means that Mars has not yet reached the octave orbit. What? Did I hear it right? Hugo, you actually asked to go to the library. Lily said in surprise. Lily, don't underestimate me, people will change. After I am familiar with astronomy, maybe I can help you calculate your marriage in the future, just like Cupid, and give you some advice on how to talk to boys so that you can be shot by Cupid's arrow. Hugo said with a smile. Thank you so much. Cupid might be more worried about you. Lily said bluntly, I think the most likely result is that Cupid uses a volley of arrows on you, but you dodge them one by one. That would be terrible. What's terrible about that? It shows that I am agile and invulnerable. Agility doesn't matter in this regard, Hugo. Maureen reminded, if Cupid's love arrows don't hit you, you will have to live alone for the rest of your life. Oh, that's what you mean. Hugo suddenly realized. Chapter 373 Photo Bonfire. Maureen and Hugo went to the library together. Hugo was very concerned about what the centaur said. He had been flipping through books on astronomy and divination, trying to figure out the meaning of the Mars octave orbit. Maureen went to the forbidden book section to practice the time magic after image with Walker in the book Across Arcane Time and Space. Unfortunately, this time magic was still too difficult. He couldn't even use the spell at present, let alone make the past happen again for 10 minutes. Any tricks, Walker? Maureen sat on the ground and looked at another self. He had failed more than 100 times. When he was most effective, his wand emitted a puff of smoke, but nothing was displayed. He was blocked by a spell again. There were a total of 13 time and space magics. Maureen had such a hard time learning the second one. I really don't know where the spells behind will go. You have to figure out where you are first. Walker also sat down and looked at Maureen. You must first recognize yourself before you can recognize time. I'm in the book. Maureen said helplessly. He already knew how to recognize himself, but Walker always said it was not enough. Your understanding of time is only superficial. If you don't think more deeply, it's easy to get lost when using time magic. Walker said patiently. But this statement was too far-fetched for Maureen. He still couldn't figure out how to understand time. The best he could do was not to be affected by the time converter, that's all. Maureen tried for a whole morning but made no progress. He had to leave the restricted area of the library and go to the public area to find Hugo, who was also depressed. There's no such thing as an octave track in the books I read. Hugo curled his lips and closed the book heavily. You're going to the centaurs tonight, right? Maybe you can help me ask. You can try, but don't hold too high hopes. When Maureen and Hugo went downstairs, they happened to meet Anran, who had just come out of the school infirmary. Anran jumped up to catch up with him. Did you see any 7th grade students with green hair today, Anran? Hugo asked. No, but I saw a girl's hair turned into flames. Very strange. Anran exclaimed. You can imagine, a long head of flaming hair fluttering in the wind, just like in the movies. Movies? Hugo asked in confusion. Oh, it's just something we do for entertainment. I'm surprised that wizards don't make movies. I don't think wizards need special effects when they make movies. Anran lifted the shoulder strap of her school bag and said. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other. They didn't know what special effects were. By the way, is there any harm in that hair turning into flames? Can my hair turn into flames? Will it burn my head? Hugo shook his red hair and thought this thing was pretty cool. It won't burn your scalp, but it will burn all your hair follicles, and you won't be able to grow hair in the future. Anran said seriously. Hugo quickly put on an expression of I didn't say anything. Is that girl okay? Her hair was burned. Maureen asked. Madame Pomfrey did a transplant on her, transplanting her leg hair onto her head, and the lady seemed very happy, but it will take some time for it to grow back, so Madame Pomfrey conjured a wig for her. Anran explained. The three of them had lunch together, and in the afternoon, they went to the library to do homework. In the evening, Maureen said hello to Hugo, and then went to find Hagrid with Anran. This time he also brought a photo of Lucas, which was cut out of the Ministry of Magic's wanted criminal flyer, and it was a color version. Lucas in the photo was sneering at them. I've already mentioned this to Headmistress McGonagall, and she asked me to keep an eye on you two and tell you not to run around, especially Hagrid wrapped his fur coat tightly and looked at Maureen meaningfully. Maureen nodded very seriously, with full sincerity. Oda had been waiting for them at the edge of the Forbidden Forest for a long time. When they saw Maureen this time, they seemed much calmer. Although they still stared at Maureen secretly all the way, which made Maureen, a grown man, a little embarrassed. They would not say I can't see you anymore. Maureen could still accept it reluctantly. By the way, Oda, what did you mean by saying to Hugo yesterday that Mars has not yet reached the octave orbit? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Maureen shouted to Oda while sitting on the sled. Oda looked at the sky while running, and then said something irrelevant. Mars is very bright. Can't you say it? Mars is very bright. Save face, because you always can't see me. Mars is very bright. Maureen muttered twice. Talking to a centaur would simply choke people to death. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. The bonfire of the centaur tribe was burning in the snowy night. All the centaurs gathered around and looked at the photo. Ronan's expression was very serious, and his facial muscles were tense and his lines were clear. Are you sure it's him, Maureen? Ronan asked. Yes, by the way, what did Lucas look like when you saw him? Maureen moved a big stone to sit on. The centaurs had nothing to sit on, which gave him a headache. He had to use his magic wand to grind the stone flat and add a thick layer of cushion. When he cast the magic, the centaurs looked a little uneasy, but Maureen ignored them. Ronan walked to the stable on the side. There were many baskets piled in the stable, and each basket contained a lot of plant roots and leaves. When Maureen saw these plant roots and leaves, the first thing he thought of was that these were feed, just like raising horses. Later, he felt that this idea was impolite, so he quickly cut off this idea. Ronan took some grass roots from different baskets, then returned to the campfire and put them into the campfire, saying, "This is what the criminal wizard we saw looked like." Different plant roots were thrown into the campfire, and the flames of the campfire chirped briskly. A white smoke floated up from the campfire. The smoke slowly swirled, forming the appearance of a wizard wearing a cowboy hat, but the wizard pulled his hat down so low that his face could not be seen from the front. Just a back view? Maureen asked. Yes, just a back view, but it would be different if it was your photo. Ronan picked up the photo that Maureen had given him, which was cut from a wanted criminal flyer. The light from the campfire was projected onto Lucas' face in the photo, making him look even colder. Ronan threw the photo into the bonfire, and then Fizzarin also took many plants from the side. Most of these plants were new to Maureen. Some of the leaves were black, and there was a plant that looked like blood flowing on its veins. Then he remembered that it was a dragon blood orchid, which he had seen in the potion class last time. The bonfire devoured the photo, and all the smoke began to swirl slowly. Ronan put his hand into the bonfire and kept stirring it, muttering some strange syllables. Then the bonfire suddenly jumped out of many sparks, and the firefly-like sparks floated in the air. These sparks were like stars in the sky, flickering and extinguishing, forming a staggered pattern, and then 2 sparks emitted a dazzling red light, brighter than all the other sparks. "We finally found him," Ronan said in a low voice. Chapter 374 The border between white and black. "Where is it?" Maureen asked hurriedly. He couldn't understand the sparks arranged according to the stars, and didn't know what the 2 sparks meant. "The junction of white and black," Ronan said. The other centaurs neighed, and the shape of flames was reflected in their eyes. It was not known whether it was because of the bonfire or the anger in their eyes, but each centaur exuded a warrior's aura. The determination to fight for their own honor made Maureen feel in order. "Where is the junction of white and black?" Maureen asked. "We will handle this matter ourselves. In any case, thank you for letting us figure out his identity." Ronan nodded solemnly to Maureen. "It's unwise for you to go to them like this, isn't it? You should know that there is an old witch who can tell fortunes and arithmetic by his side, and it's useless for you to go there." Maureen raised his voice, thought for a moment, and emphasized that Lucas has a lot of black magic items on him. "We are warriors, Maureen, and warriors are not inferior to wizards." Ronan was very confident in the ability of their own race. He glanced at his people and said in a deep voice, "Get ready to go." A dozen centaurs had taken out their bows and large quivers from the stable. The quivers were filled with at least hundreds of arrows. Their arrows were special, thin and hard. They didn't even breathe when carrying so many arrows on their backs, thanks to their tall and strong bodies. Wizards would definitely not be able to do this. The centaurs also took some small scimitars and axes made of special metals and tied them tightly to themselves. It's not a good idea for you to go now." Unran raised her hand beside her. She felt that she should raise her hand before speaking to be more polite. "Venus hasn't entered orbit yet tonight, right?" All the centaurs who were ready to go suddenly stopped. Some of the horses' hooves clattered twice, sounding very uneasy. The atmosphere seemed a little awkward for a while. "You're right." Ronan nodded and said seriously, "We need to deal with this matter first." "Are you all so slow to react?" Maureen whispered, "Have you been blinded by the warrior's blood?" Hagrid chuckled beside him. "Then we'll wait until Venus is in orbit before we go." Ronan issued an order to the other centaurs. "We must take back the black cube no matter what." "What exactly is the black cube?" Maureen recalled the matter about the good and bad flashes of Arcturus that he and Hugo had discussed last night, and asked, "What serious things will happen if it is lost?" Ronan shook his head. "We swear to keep it a secret. If you know, you should understand that there is more than one black cube. That Lucas has stolen at least several." Maureen said impatiently, "Are you only concerned with recovering the black cubes that belong to you, and not caring about the other stolen black cubes?" Ronan and Fizarin's faces suddenly changed. "How many did that Lucas get?" Ronan said in a deep voice. "I don't know, at least several? A total of 12 boxes, right?" Maureen remembered the 12 wizards he saw on the Dumbledore Cup that day. There were 12 different symbols on the foreheads of those wizards. Ronan and Fizarin looked at each other. "Things are far from being as simple as we thought." "Oh, thank you, I never thought of this matter so simply." Maureen said unceremoniously, "If the bonfire has told you any strange secrets, you will understand that Lucas is looking for me. Maybe they want me to open the black box and release some disgusting monster that can fly and hide. Have you heard of the place with 2 moons?" Ronan and Fezlin opened their mouths wide. "Good, you must have heard of this place." Maureen could see it from the expressions of Ronan and Fezlin. "What is the place with 2 moons?" Maureen. Hagrid asked puzzledly. "I don't know, maybe the centaurs know, you can ask them." Maureen shook his head. He didn't know what was so special about that place. Hagrid looked at Ronan, but Ronan turned his eyes away, staring at the campfire, and said, "I don't know how you know the place with 2 moons, but we will stop it. I've been to that place." Maureen emphasized, "You should tell me the truth of the matter. No one can go to that place." Ronan shook his head. "If you go, it will be difficult to come back." "Then what do you think I often get lost?" Maureen stared at Ronan. He didn't know how to convince Ronan, because he really had no evidence to prove that he had been there. Every time he went there, he just came back once, which was more like experiencing an illusion. But Maureen knew that it was definitely not an illusion in that case. The centaurs gave him the fire because it was recorded on their stone tablet that the invisible man would get lost in the dark when he approached the black magic cube at dusk. The centaurs should know some inside information about this matter. But Maureen could never get a direct explanation from the centaurs. We don't know much about that place. Fazellin raised his head, glanced at the stars, and said solemnly, Venus has entered orbit. As soon as he finished speaking, a centaur immediately let out a shrill scream and twitched continuously. Maureen could only put this question aside for the time being, and ran over with Enran to help the centaur chosen by the curse. It seems that the curse can't be completely lifted, right? Maureen and Enran worked together to relieve the centaur's pain, and then looked up and asked. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. So it is urgent to snatch the black cube back from the thief. Only in this way can we stop the curse as soon as possible. Ronan changed to a sad and low voice again. But can you guarantee that you will catch Lucas by this time tomorrow? Maureen was very skeptical. Even if the centaurs had powerful magic, they could not catch Lucas, who had a strong background, especially with Pinged and a mysterious old witch behind him, which was enough to turn the tide of the battle. We can't guarantee it. Ronan said faintly, but we won't sit and wait for death. He glanced at all the tribesmen, and then said, all tribesmen are on combat alert. One team will stay to protect women and children and guard the homeland, and the second team will follow me. Swish. 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 The centaurs have lined up in an orderly manner. Each centaur took out the arrows on his back and put them on the string. How are you going? Are you going to run? By the time you get there, that person will have left, right? Maureen asked again. This is a very practical question. Although Maureen didn't know where the border between white and black was, it would definitely not be near the Forbidden Forest. It would be too slow for the centaurs to run there like this. We don't need to run over there. Ronan didn't answer Maureen's question directly. He took out a blue leaf from his back pocket. The blue leaf was like crystal clear. He threw the blue leaf into the bonfire, and the golden bonfire suddenly turned blue. The blue flames kept jumping up and down, and then the flames jumped out of the bonfire as if being pulled by something, and fell on the open space not far away, forming a circle. Maureen set his eyes on the blue circle and was suddenly slightly surprised. He now understood how powerful the magic of the centaurs was. The circle formed by the blue flame was like a door, leading to a mass grave. Rows of lonely tombstones looked very thin under the night sky. There were also a few weak crooked trees swaying slightly in the night wind, and the weeds were almost as high as the tombstones. There was also a dilapidated wooden house not far away. The wooden house seemed to be where a gravekeeper used to live, but it had become dead silent at this time, and even the broken doors and windows looked like a dark bottomless pit. Stand by for 15 minutes. Ronan had crossed the blue fire circle, and the other centaurs followed closely behind. Chapter 375, Mass Graves and Lonely House. Let's go check it out too. Maureen said immediately. You two stay here, I'll go. Hagrid held Maureen and Anran down, then took out a pink umbrella from his pocket and crossed the blue fire circle. Wait, Professor, maybe we can help. Maureen shouted. The stars show that the two of them will appear in this mass grave in 15 minutes. You two can't leave here. Fezzerin was one of the remaining teams, and his huge body blocked Maureen's way. I know those two people. If they use any disguise, I can see through it. Maureen said seriously, any divination magic will not work on me. Have you forgotten this? He's right, Firenze, let him come over. Ronan said on the other side of the blue fire circle. No, Ronan, we agreed that we can't let them take risks. Hagrid said angrily, I promised to bring him to help you remove the divination curse, but I didn't promise to let him participate in your battle. We will protect him, but this place is a little weird, we need his help. Ronan frowned. And ran, you stay with Mr. Fezzelin, don't leave. Maureen had already bypassed Fezzelin, stepped into the blue fire circle, and came to the mass grave. Nonsense. Hagrid was very angry and was about to pick up Maureen and throw him back, but it was too late. Ronan waved his hand at the blue fire circle, and the fire circle was extinguished. Fezzelin and Enran disappeared at the other end. Ronan, what are you doing? Maureen can't come here. Hagrid said angrily. Sorry, Hagrid, I feel that this place is not simple, and may need Maureen's help. He doesn't have to do it. If the witch uses powerful confusing methods like last time, Maureen can help us find the way. Ronan said in a low voice, Fezzelin will come to pick us up in an hour. I hope we can make a quick decision. Maureen looked around. He was standing in front of a tombstone. It was probably because of the long time that the words on the tombstone could no longer be seen clearly. Some of the tombstones next to him were covered with green vines. It was December, which should have been a cold winter with snow, but strangely, the wild grass here showed no signs of withering, and there was not even a bit of snow on the ground. This place was really weird. Where is this place? Maureen asked. It's far away from Hogwarts. Ronan brought 15 centaurs. At his signal, the centaurs had dispersed. Each centaur found a position and took out a clay pot. Maureen found a strange grass paste in the clay pot. They dipped their bows and arrows in the grass paste, and then used the bows and arrows to draw a pattern on the ground at a certain distance. The arrangement of these patterns was very special, and they seemed to echo each other from a distance. A strange breath sank into the ground. White nettle grass paste, once they appear, they can't appear away. Ronan walked through dense grass, and his horse's hoof stepped on the grass twice. The grass grew rapidly and covered his figure. Maureen, you have to follow me closely, don't run around. It's not easy for Hagrid to hide his huge body. When he squatted, he was as tall as a normal person. Maureen took out his wand and cast a disillusionment spell in front of him. His disillusionment spell could only barely make Hagrid look like a crawling big rock in the distance, and it couldn't make Hagrid's body completely invisible. 15 centaurs spread out with a lonely wooden house as the center. The centaurs could cast some plant magic. They used the camouflage of the night to make plants grow, so it was not difficult to hide their bodies. That wooden house is very strange. Ronan pulled the bow to full string and said softly, "What did you find?" Maureen asked puzzledly. Ronan glanced at Maureen and asked, "Is your fire still there?" "Yes, I always keep it in my pocket." Maureen suddenly came to his senses and exclaimed, "Are you saying there is a black magic cube hidden in that hut?" "I'm not sure, but there is indeed the same smell in that hut," Ronan said. Maureen's expression became serious. Every time he approached the black cube, it would take him to the place with 2 moons, but this time he was so close that he didn't feel anything. It must be because of the fire of the centaurs. We must get the black cube first, and it's better to get it before them. Maureen stared at the wooden house. Ronan shook his head, "Not yet. Each black cube is protected by very powerful magic. This place may be very old, and the guardian who passed it down has lost contact, but no matter what, the magic of the wooden house itself is not something we can quickly crack." Ronan looked up at the stars, and the stars in the sky were twinkling slightly. "And we don't have time to get the black cube," Ronan whispered. There was silence all around, only the chirping of insects at night, and the cool breeze rustled through the grass on the mass grave. Puff! Puff! 2 slight explosions came from the air, as if someone was squeezed out of the air. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. The pale moonlight shone on these 2 people. They were like the soul-catching gods of death, walking in the cemetery looking for lonely ghosts. Maureen's pupils shrank slightly, and his heart began to beat faster. He immediately thought of these 2 guys. Lucas and the old witch. These 2 people really came to this lonely place. Lucas was still wearing his brown cowboy hat, holding a magic wand in his hand, staring at the wooden house in the distance with a cold look. "Is this the place?" Lucas raised the brim of his hat slightly. His face was pale but fierce in the moonlight. "This is really a good place to hide things. Who would have thought that things would be here?" the old witch said in a gloomy voice. The wrinkles on her face piled up together, as if they were about to fall off. Her whole body was lifeless, without the vitality of a living person. If she could not speak, anyone would probably think she was a corpse crawling out of the grave. All the centaurs lowered their bodies and aimed their bows and arrows at the 2 people. As long as Ronan gave an order, countless arrows would rain down on them. The old witch and Lucas were already walking slowly towards the wooden house. Lucas walked very fast, while the old witch staggered forward, panting slightly. Every step she took seemed to take her life, but the strange thing was that she moved slowly, but she did not lag behind Lucas, as if she could match Lucas's 7 or 8 steps with 1 step. But at this time, the old witch suddenly let out a light exclamation and then stopped. "What's wrong?" Lucas also stopped. "Hey!" A shrill laugh suddenly rang out of the old witch's dry mouth. The laugh was shrill and sharp, echoing in the mass graves as if a ghost was about to crawl out to claim life. The dry grass on the graves was bent down by the laugh. "The centaur's divination magic is really good. They divined me, and I just realized it at this time," The old witch raised her head, and a strange white light appeared in her cloudy eyes. She smiled miserably and looked in the direction of Hagrid. Maureen secretly cried out in his heart that it was not good. The old witch was too vigilant and had discovered them. But Ronan beside Maureen had already let out a sharp neigh. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.